Chapter 1. Chapter 1, Rebirth. Rain Country, Ling Clan residence in Grey Cloud Town. The moon has passed the middle of the night sky. Ling Han spent exactly 10 seconds to confirm one fact: he truly had been reincarnated. Spending 10 seconds just to confirm a fact was extremely inconceivable to a strong person from the heaven tier, but at the same time, it also proved that what had happened to him was just as inconceivable. In his previous life, he stood at the summit of martial arts and had completely unprecedented achievements in the art of alchemy. The three-fire guide that he had invented had even caused a revolution in the field of theory of alchemy, and he was respectfully titled Alchemy Emperor. Still, he was unsatisfied and thought of further advancement, to reach the legendary shattering void tier, to shatter the void, and become immortal. As such, he visited innumerable ancient sites and finally entered Black Blood Valley, overcoming various dangerous obstacles before he discovered an ancient tower. He was not to be disappointed, for golden words appeared on the ancient tower and revealed what was a scroll with supreme skills, named Indestructible Heaven Scroll. Training in it to the highest level would allow creation of a body that neither ages nor decays, to coexist with the sky and the earth and to have the same lifespan as the sun and the moon. However, despite being a warrior who has reached the heaven tier, Ling Han still felt that Indestructible Heaven Scroll was extremely obscure and difficult to comprehend, feeling as if he was reading a heavenly book completely at a loss. He forced himself to memorize this collection of supreme skills, and was just about to investigate the ancient tower when the tower jolted slightly, exuding a pillar of heavenly light that instantly shattered his mortal body. However, the strange thing was, his spirit did not actually disperse and entered a state of semi-consciousness, which lasted for more than 10,000 years. In these 10 millennia, his spirit was immersed in analyzing the Indestructible Heaven Scroll. He couldn't do anything else during that time anyway. Finally, he comprehended the first layer of the supreme skills described in the scroll. To spend 10,000 years to comprehend only the first layer of a scroll containing skills despite being a warrior of the heaven tier, what kind of concept was that? A warrior of the heaven tier only had the lifespan of less than 1,000 years. Thus, in a normal situation, there would be no one in this world that could fully learn the contents of Indestructible Heaven Scroll because, before one had even started comprehending it, they would die of old age first. Yet Ling Han, through this strange occurrence, grasped the first layer of Indestructible Heaven Scroll, and he was now suddenly reincarnated and reborn in the body of a 16-year-old young man that shared the same name, Ling Han. It was extremely inconceivable. No matter how it happened, I am reborn. Although this body has only reached the second layer of body refining tier, and couldn't be any more trashy than this, I was once a warrior of the heaven tier, standing at the top of martial Dao, and a grandmaster of alchemy. If the body's condition is poor, then I shall use medicinal pills to compensate for its shortcoming. I do not believe I will not be able to return to the top. Moreover, I can finally train in the Indestructible Heaven Scroll. This is a collection of supreme skills, so powerful that, it may not be from this mortal plane, but from the legendary immortal plane instead. Otherwise, how is it possible for me to spend 10,000 years and only grasp the first layer? In this life, I will definitely be able to exceed all those who came before, and become immortal. Additionally, what is the matter with this body? 16 years old, and yet the guy had only reached the second layer of body refining tier? Could it be that the martial Dao of the current time is dying? Bang! Along with an explosion-like sound, uncountable memories flooded his mind. They belonged to the other Ling Han, and thus were the memories of the original owner of this body. Through this process, two completely different minds melded together and formed one, no longer separate from each other. I see. Ling Han nodded in his thoughts. The reason why he was only at the second layer of the body refining tier was because his spirit base was of a too poor quality. The prerequisite to train as a warrior was that one needed to have a spirit base. Only with a spirit base could one absorb the spiritual chi from heaven and earth, train one's body and transform the spiritual chi into their own origin power. Some types of spirit bases absorb the spiritual chi quickly and some absorb it more slowly. To differentiate between them, spirit bases were categorized into 4 major grades: heaven, earth, black and yellow. Every major grade was further divided into 3 minor levels: high, medium and low. The best type was the heaven grade high level, and the poorest type was the yellow grade low level. The grade of spirit base was decided by its purity. The purer it was, the better. Ling Han's spirit base was in utter disarray, containing all 5 elements. In the world of martial arts, this was the worst type of spirit base. It could barely be considered yellow grade low level. It was the reason why he had only reached the 2nd layer of body refining tier at his age of 16, while others of the same age had at least reached the 4th or 5th layer of body refining tier. Ling Han in his previous life possessed a heaven-grade spirit base, which was also a high-level one, the 9 Yang Fire spirit base. In addition to that, he had an incomparable talent in the art of alchemy and used pills to support his cultivation, spending only 200 years to reach the heaven tier, something never achieved by anyone else in the past. 5 elements disarray spirit base. This is the lowest level of a spirit base. No wonder my predecessor only reached the 2nd layer of body refining tier no matter how much he worked and trained. To me, this 5 elements disarray spirit base is a bit of a problem, but with alchemical pills, I will need only 4 years to return to the top at most. Yi! Ling Han exclaimed in his heart, and his face showed an expression of disbelief and utmost surprise. Using his extremely strong mental prowess to once again peer at the spirit base in his dantian, he was stunned for a moment. Then, shock gave way to exuberant joy, showing on his face. This isn't the 5 elements disarray spirit base. The 5 elements are actually in complete balance and form the shape of a lotus. That means, this is the 5 elements mix chaos lotus, the best of the best, even rarer than the 9 Yang Fire spirit base. This is the spirit base hailed as the spirit base of the immortal grade. My predecessor had slow progress, but it was because immortal grade spirit base requires specialized skills to realize its true prowess. And, it just so happens that I have hold of skills that suit this 5 elements mix chaos lotus, the 5 elements heaven grade skill. 100 years. No, I only need 50 years, and I can once again reach the heaven tier. Even with his status as a warrior of the heaven tier from his previous life, Ling Han couldn't control his expression, now full of joy. The spirit base was something one was born with, there was no way to change it at all. In his previous life, to shatter the empty void and become immortal, he had visited various ancient sites and obtained many different types of secret arts and cultivation techniques. The 5 elements heaven grade skill was one of them. In his previous life, he stood at the top of the martial world, and in this life, he would once again bask in glory and create an undying legend. How did my predecessor die? Ling Han flipped through his memories, and anger quickly appeared on his face. His predecessor was the only son of the Ling clan's head, Ling Dongxing. His mother and grandparents had all passed away very early on. The Ling clan was a clan of martial artists, every clan member knew martial arts, and was proud of the fact. So, how did someone like Ling Dongxing become the clan head? That was because he was the strongest and had reached his position through battling. But Ling Han was regarded as trash since his childhood because of the issue with his spirit base, and had received much ridicule from those around him. He believed that there would definitely be some gains. He then went to the foreign realm and visited the dimensions one by one to see if there were any results while distributing more testing devices. One had to have a long-term vision. After arriving at a medium-level dimension, Ling Han finally received good news. Such a person had finally been discovered. This made Ling Han overjoyed, and he hurriedly went to take a look. This was a young man, and his natural talent in cultivation was very high. At present, he was under the tutelage of an 8th heaven celestial king. He had already reached the peak stage of the ascending origin tier, and was about to advance to the celestial king tier. When they had first discovered him, he had been just a little kid in his teens, and he had been able to reach the peak stage of the ascending origin tier in 100 million years. This cultivation speed was not low at all. This young man's name was Ba Tai. Ling Han taught him what to do, and the two of them extended their divine senses, entering into each other's minds to touch that speck of light. Ling Han had already obtained the life code in his ball of light. There was no need for him to comprehend anymore. Instead, it was up to Ba Tai. A few days later, although Ba Tai did not unlock the secret of his own sphere of light, he gave all the information he had obtained to Ling Han. Ling Han nodded, and gave Ba Tai a large amount of cultivation resources. This brat might enjoy endless development in the future, so it was better to nurture him. He began to enter seclusion to digest the information he had obtained. Very slowly, it took Ling Han several million years before he was able to analyze the profound secrets contained within. He revealed a satisfied smile and filled in a few more holes in the secret code of life. Boom! In his body, every dimension was undergoing drastic changes. Previously, there was only grass that was less than an inch tall, but now it was growing sturdily, reaching a foot in length. Furthermore, they were no longer pure green in color. Instead, there were green, blue, purple, and red. They were all colorful, showing a variety of hues. Although there were still only plants, Ling Han's dimensions had made great progress in their level of existence. Every dimension was exuding vigorous life energy that was nourishing the said dimension. This speed was comparable to Ling Han's full efforts at cultivation. If he obtained a few more secret codes of life, wouldn't his cultivation speed be able to soar? Ling Han's biggest headache was the dimensions in his body. Although they gave him powerful battle prowess, they also hindered his advancement. However, if this problem could be solved now, then it would be perfect. Most importantly, these dimensions were growing on their own. He didn't need to spend any effort at all. Great! Ling Han did not take Ba Tai as his disciple, but still brought him to the profound negative realm. In this place, Ba Tai had even more room for growth. He continued to travel through the various dimensions. After having gained once, his confidence soared, and he naturally became even more proactive. Heaven had truly blessed him. In the next few million years, he met two more prodigies like this. One was called Ma Chunggao, and the other was Enfeiyue. At first glance, there was nothing special about them, but one had a particularly powerful divine sense, and the other had outstanding talent in formations. Ling Han went into seclusion for a long time, and once again digested these two secret codes of life. Of course, Ma Chunggao and Enfeiyue were also brought to the profound negative realm by him. No matter what, they were still worth nurturing. After Ling Han digested these two secret codes of life, the dimensions in his body underwent another drastic change. These were two abnormally rapid evolutions, causing birds and beasts to appear in every dimension. From plants to animals, this was naturally an incomparably drastic evolution with huge changes. I have only just started training in it, and have already felt such remarkable effects. Yet this is completely different from other types of cultivation techniques. Ordinary cultivation techniques make use of the spirit base to absorb spiritual chi from the sky and the earth to transform into origin power, and indestructible heaven scroll is the exact opposite, using origin power to refine the body and heal injuries. Once my training reaches the highest level, achieving immortality may not be impossible. That is why it is called Heaven Scroll. Unfortunately, the level now is not enough, otherwise I could use indestructible Heaven Scroll to heal my spirit base. Ling Han opened his eyes and, looking at the growing light outside his window, murmured softly, "Now, I shall go and meet with Ling Zhongquan, that shameless old man, and give him a surprise." He put on his shoes, walked towards the doorway and opened the door. In the doorway was a tall figure, blocking his advance. This man's name was Zhong Yuan, one of Ling Zhongquan's lackeys. "Young Master Han, Chief Butler has commanded that you have to stay in your room today," Zhong Yun said with a laugh. Although the person in front of him was the Sun the clan head, he was also a notorious piece of trash, and just a joke in his eyes. Ling Han's gaze grew cold, and said, "You dare hinder me?" It was exactly that. The chief butler had told him that he couldn't allow Ling Han to come out and get in their way at all costs. If things come to head, he even had the permission to attack him. Thus, Zhong Yun smiled falsely and said, "This is a command from the chief butler. Young Master Han, please do not make things difficult for me. Ling Zhongquan, this old dog, is truly cautious. He has seriously wounded me and still feels insecure, going so far as to assign someone to guard the door," Ling Han thought. This also showed how important it was to Ling Zhongquan for his grandson to enter Huyang Academy. If this hope was shattered, Ling Zhongquan's despair and fury could be imagined. "Get out of my way." Ling Han spoke coldly. "Young Master Han, this was ordered by the chief but dash. Pa." Ling Han raised his hand and gave him a slap, speaking coldly, "What are you doing?" I told you to get out of my way, and you don't. What? He had actually received a slap from a piece of trash. Zhong Yuan covered his face in disbelief. This piece of trash actually dared to resist him. What kind of joke was this? He was furious, and recalled Ling Zhongquan's words from before. If things come to head, he had permission to attack. He could not stop his hate from rising, and said thickly, "Young Master Han, this is what you have forced me to dash." Pa. Ling Han raised his hand once more, and gave him another solid slap. Chapter 2. Chapter 2, Might. Zhong Yuan was about to go crazy. He had actually received 2 slaps from a piece of trash. In his fury, he did not consider how a piece of trash at only 2nd layer of body refining tier could slap someone at 4th layer of body refining tier twice. Opening his mouth to release a great roar, he pounced at Ling Han. There was only one thought in his head now, and that was to ruthlessly beat up this piece of trash. His one punch was filled with great power, bringing with it a slight breeze as it headed towards his target. Ling Han was oddly calm and immobile. In his previous life, he could naturally get rid of 10,000 of Zhong Yuan with a flick of his fingers, but now he only had the power of the 2nd layer of body refining tier. The difference in strength was a bit problematic, but that was it. The one controlling this body was, after all, a former warrior of the heaven tier. His strength may have been lost, but his insight remained. Zhong Yuan only needed to raise his hand or move his leg, and Ling Han would be able to deduce where his punch would be heading towards and where his feet would be moving to. As a result, by the time Zhong Yuan's punch flew out, Ling Han had already reacted. Who? The fist had hit its target and Zhong Yuan revealed a cold grin. Once hit with his punch, its overwhelming power would instantly cause Ling Han to lose all means of resistance, leaving him completely at his opponent's mercy. He had hit his target. En. Zhong Yuan's face revealed his surprise. Although his punch appeared to have hit Ling Han's face, it had actually missed by a slight margin. Ling Han managed to take a step back in time and just barely managed to dodge his fist. His fist stopped exactly in front of the tip of Ling Han's nose. It was almost touching it, so perfectly calculated as if he had used a ruler to carefully measure the distance. It must be a coincidence, Zhong Yuan thought in his heart. And it was at this moment that Ling Han's palm once more flew towards him. Pa! A loud, crisp noise was heard, and Zhong Yuan received another solid slap. Damn it! Zhong Yuan spat out a mouthful of spit, let out a loud shout, and once again launched his fist, punching towards Ling Han. Who? Zhong Yuan's fist once again missed. It was as if Ling Han moved at the same moment as his upper body flew backward. Using both hands to push himself off the ground, his right foot automatically kicked out, hitting the spot in between Zhong Yuan's legs with a soft sound. Ao-. Even if his cultivation was at the 4th layer of body refining tier, it didn't matter, he would still be unable to have the ability Iron Balls, and this kick had hit its target solidly. Zhong Yuan suddenly dropped down onto his knees, both hands gripping his crotch as large droplets of cold sweat appeared on his face. You're so treacherous. Zhong Yuan twitched, his whole face was so twisted it looked inhuman. Pa! Ling Han once again gave him a slap. Zhong Yuan's mouth opened, and spat out a few broken teeth. Ling Han naturally had no sympathy for him, and said, "A dog will always be a dog." As expected, it would not be able to spit out ivory. Zhong Yuan was extremely furious. He had actually been made to kneel on the ground and received a violent slap from someone at the 2nd layer of body refining tier. What kind of humiliation was this? He wanted to counterattack, but the kick that his privates received had directly removed all his power to resist. Every move he took made his balls hurt in agony. But he definitely couldn't allow Ling Han to ruin Ling Zhongquan's important business. Otherwise, if he couldn't complete the task that the other had assigned him, going by Ling Zhongquan's character, he would definitely be killed. Han, young Master Han, listen to me, you can't leave this place. Actually, you have been poisoned. Once you leave this room, you will die of poison. His thoughts were anxious, so he tried to quickly think of something that would make Ling Han stay here. Ling Han could not help but smile. Did he think that this kind of terrible acting would be able to deceive him? He flew up and kicked Zhong Yuan away. He didn't have any free time to waste on this lackey. He had to stop Ling Zhongquan's evil scheme from succeeding instead. Otherwise, His father would have risked his life only to benefit others. As for Zhong Yuan, Ling Han naturally would not take this kind of minor character into consideration. After all, Ling Zhongquan only needed to see him appear, and would naturally come to deal with Zhong Yuan. He had no need to dirty his own hands. Don't go. Don't go. Zhong Yuan's sobs and pleas spread out from behind him. It was as if he could already see his own miserable end. Accomplice to a villain, he only had himself to blame, and didn't deserve the slightest bit of sympathy. Ling Han strode forwards. After a few minutes, he arrived at the inner doorway to the living room. He hadn't stepped in yet but already could hear a loud, aged voice. "Miss Liu, please, please." The living room had an inner and outer doorway. The inner doorway was connected to the inner court, while the outer doorway would lead to the main door. Looking out through the curtains, he could see a group of 5 walking in. The group comprised of 5 people, 4 male, 1 female. Aside from the young woman, Ling Han could recognize the 4 men. They were all Ling clan clansmen. One of them was an elderly man, the chief butler, Ling Zhongquan. 2 of the other 3 were middle-aged men of around 40 years, both Ling Zhongquan's sons. The last one was a young man, older than Ling Han by about 1 or 2 years, and that was none other than Ling Zhongquan's eldest grandson, Ling Mu Yuan. Ling Han looked towards the only female in the group. Even with his eyesight from his previous life as one at the heaven tier, his eyes brightened. This young woman was truly beautiful. Her looks were like autumn, her skin as fair as the moon. She seemed to be only 17 or 18, but already possessed an elegant demeanor and beauty that could bring disaster to country and people. It was just that her aura was as cold as if she was an icy mountain, driving away any who dared to approach. This young girl would certainly be the person sent by Huyang Academy. What a coincidence. Ling Han's eyes widened slightly. He had discovered something even more coincidental, and his lips couldn't help but reveal a smile. Both parties sat separately in their positions as guest and host. A few maidservants came forwards to serve fragrant tea and stood respectfully at the sides of the 5 people's seats. "Has the person from the Ling clan that you are sending to the academy gotten ready?" Liu Yutong opened her mouth and spoke, her voice both cold and melodious, with a bit of disdain. What she hated the most were people who would enter the academy through the back door. Although she was commanded to come here, she had no good feelings towards this future younger brother disciple. "Ready, ready." Ling Zhongquan hurriedly spoke. Although he was old enough to be the young girl's grandfather, both parties were of the same level, element-gathering tier. One's skill in martial arts did not depend on age. Only the strong would be respected. Ling Zhongquan even had a feeling that this young girl's level was slightly higher than his own. He was at the 6th layer of element-gathering tier, while this girl could be of the 7th layer, or maybe even 8th. This also caused him to be even more eager to send his own grandson to Huyang Academy. In a few years, he would be of an even higher level than Ling Dongxing and help him snatch the position of the clan head. "Mu Yun, quickly come and greet your elder sister disciple Liu." The old man turned and spoke to Ling Mu Yuan. "Yes, grandfather." Ling Mu Yun spoke with great respect. Cupping his hands in Liu Yutong's direction, he said, "Mu Yun greets elder sister disciple Liu." There was heat in his gaze. He felt wild ambition when looking upon this cold, beautiful and incomparably strong beauty. He believed that, with enough time spent together, he would be able to capture the heart of the beauty. Liu Yutong was slightly surprised. She recalled that the person from Ling clan she was to escort was named Ling Han. However, it was none of her business. She was only responsible for bringing a person from the Ling clan back to the academy. "Since you're ready, then let's depart," she said calmly. "Miss Liu, why don't you stay for a few days in our humble abode, so that we can express a small bit of our gratitude?" Ling Zhongquan hurriedly said. He wanted to get close to this young girl, and in the future, she would also be able to take care of his grandson. "No need." Liu Yutong rejected coldly, turned and was about to leave. "Please wait," a voice was heard, and Ling Han strode out. The faces of Ling Zhongquan and his group changed slightly. However much they looked down on this piece of trash of the Ling clan, they were the thieves right now, and thieves would naturally feel guilty. "Younger brother Han, weren't you injured?" Return quickly to your room to rest. Ling Muyun reacted the quickest. He shot forwards and reached Ling Han's side, extending his hand. He wanted to fall upon Ling Han at the first moment, without giving the other any opportunity to open his mouth. He was at the 7th layer of body refining tier, and his strength was not something Zhong Yuan could compare to. Chapter 3. Chapter 3, You're sick, I can heal you. There were altogether 9 layers of the body refining tier. The 1st to 3rd layers were usually called the early stage of body refining tier, 4th to 6th levels were the middle stage, and 7th to 9th levels were the late stage. Martial artists from 3 different stages had a great disparity in their strength. And the higher the layer, the larger the disparity was. A martial artist at the 9th layer facing a martial artist at the 8th layer would have an overwhelming advantage. However, a martial artist at the 1st layer of body refining tier against a martial artist from the 2nd layer would not be at such a large disadvantage. Previously, Ling Han seemed to be only 2 layers below Zhong Yuan, but there was a major disparity of 1 stage between them. However, Ling Muyun was at the 7th layer of body refining tier, and was of the late stage of body refining tier higher than Ling Han by 2 stages. This was an unbreachable gap. Even if Ling Han had once been one of the strongest heaven tier warriors, he would still be unable to breach this huge difference in ability. After all, the base he had now was too low. So what to do? Ling Han's eyes grew serious, and taking advantage of the moment the other's palm was heading towards him, he suddenly raised his fist in an attack. Ling Muyun could not help showing an expression of ridicule. Although he didn't know how Ling Han managed to come here, he was a well-known piece of trash amongst the whole of Ling clan. What kind of threat could he be to himself? He circulated origin power, and his chest muscles hardened, becoming as dense as iron. So what if he received a hit from Ling Han? The important thing now was to restrict Ling Han and not allow him the chance to open his mouth. Sure enough. The corners of Ling Han's mouth curved in a slight smile. The other's reaction was completely within his expectations. You're about to suffer this time. Peng. Because Ling Muyun did not make any move to dodge, this sudden punch hit its target solidly. Ling Muyun still looked disdainful as he extended his hand and placed it on Ling Han's shoulder. Young brother Han, I'll send you back. He hadn't finished speaking before he spat out a mouthful of blood. This wasn't even the end. He felt his chest was boiling, as if he was about to throw up all his internal organs. He suddenly fell and sat down on the ground, his expression extremely ugly. Teng, 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 Ling Han retreated a total of 7 steps. He stopped once his back met the wall behind him. What was this? Ling Han had used a special technique in that punch. Its name was Hill Separating Shock. It allowed power to pass through the opponent's defenses before exploding, which was why although Ling Muyun had used origin power to defend, Ling Han's power still managed to pass through his muscles and explode inside his body. Naturally, it became an extremely heavy blow to Ling Muyun. This was also thanks to the fact that Ling Muyun was at the 7th layer of body refining tier. Otherwise, he would have been seriously injured by this punch. Even death would not be an impossibility. To look down upon one of the strongest of the heaven tier warriors was to bring trouble onto oneself. Still, 7th layer of body refining tier was still 7th layer of body refining tier. The rebound of origin power was still far from what Ling Han could handle. Thus, he too had been jarred to the point that he staggered and retreated. Due to the shock of power, his right arm was suddenly dislocated. Ka. Ling Han did not even wrinkle his brow and used his left hand to twist his right arm back into position. It wasn't until that moment that Ling Zhongquan and his group finally reacted. They were all angered and shocked. Their anger was because Ling Han had actually wounded Ling Muyun, while their shock was because they were wondering, how had this piece of trash managed to accomplish such a feat? Meanwhile, the few maidservants were even more dumbfounded. Was this still the young Master Han they knew? How could he be so fierce that, with one punch, he had injured young Master Muyun, who has always been known as a genius, to the point that the latter was throwing up blood? Little beast, how dare you be so ruthless? Ling Zhongquan immediately shouted. Muyun was only worried about you and wanted to send you back to your room, yet you did something so ruthless, you crazy dog. He sure was sly, immediately making a verbal counterattack through false accusation. Ling Mu Yun too regained his breath. When his eyes fell upon Ling Han, they were filled with murder. He was the genius of the Ling clan, and yet he was actually injured by a piece of trash. How could his ego accept such a blow? Ling Han completely ignored the two, and instead looked at Liu Yutong. "Miss, you're sick." This. Ling Zhongquan was about to make a move, but when he heard these words, he forcefully held back. The other was a student from Huyang Academy, and Huyang Academy was established by the imperial family of Rain Country. Those who managed to enroll there would definitely have come from a strong, huge background, and would be something that far exceed the background of a person at element gathering tier. However, Ling Han actually said that the other was sick. Was he seeking death? Very good, now implicate Ling Dongxing too, Chief Butler thought. Someone would do his dirty work for him and he would be able to easily take the position of clan head. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Ling Dongxing, Ling Dongxing, you would never have thought that your son is not only a piece of trash, but also someone who will ruin you. When Liu Yutong looked at Ling Han, her eyes revealed slight disgust. She was born very beautiful, and was also the princess of one of the 8 great clans of the imperial city, the Liu clan. The Liu clan was an existence that was only below the imperial family in status, and naturally, she did not lack any number of young men who tried to ingratiate themselves with her. Some would even try the opposite, pretending to be cold to attract her interest. She naturally thought that Ling Han was the same sort of pest, only that he was using the method of cursing her. This was the first time that she had encountered this tactic, but this did not give her any feeling of novelty, only disgust. "How dare you!" Ling Zhongquan was an observant man, and shouted in a timely manner, "Kneel down quickly and apologize to Miss Liu." Ling Han gave a calm smile. "In this world, aside from my parents, I will kneel down to no one." Looking at Liu Yutong, he walked towards her. He stopped once he was about 3 steps away. That was because he knew this was the limit of the other's patience. If he went any closer, she would definitely take action. He didn't want to be hit one bit. "Since you were 10, have you been fainting every year for no reason?" In the beginning, it was once a year, but it has become more and more frequent. "At present, you should be fainting once every 10 days, Ling Han spoke with a lowered voice, only allowing Liu Yutong alone to hear his words. Liu Yutong's expression changed. This illness of hers was only known to a few select people, even in the Liu clan. How did Ling Han manage to find out about it? She couldn't refrain from once again sizing up Ling Han as she asked, "You know the reason?" "Naturally." Ling Han proudly nodded. Otherwise, he would not speak such shocking words. "It's 3 yin vanishing veins. It's a kind of curse from the gods. Those who possess the 3 yin vanishing veins would usually only be able to live until 20. That's because during your 20th year, you will once again fall unconscious, forever unable to regain consciousness." Liu Yutong was silent, but she believed Ling Han's words because after her symptoms became more and more serious, her family had brought her to visit many famous doctors. However, every doctor she visited could not do anything, and didn't even know the name of the illness. Still, one of them deduced that she would faint more and more frequently and, one day, she would no longer wake up. Now, she had finally found out what illness she had, but what of it? All the famous doctors in Rain Country could not do anything, so she naturally would not think that Ling Han had any way to help. "I can heal you," Ling Han said at that very moment. Liu Yutong's heart trembled, but her face did not reveal anything. "If you can heal me, I can allow you to become a court official, or even let you have uncountable resources for cultivation." Ling Han mustered a smile. "There is only one way to heal the 3 yin vanishing veins, and that is to train in 3 yin mysterious arts, and it just so happens that I know this art. I can teach you, but there is one condition: you have to become my follower." Liu Yutong could not restrain anger in her heart. She was the princess of the Liu clan, and was also a genius in martial arts. At the age of 17, she had already reached the 8th layer of element gathering tier. And now a puny little martial artist at 2nd layer of body refining tier actually wanted to take her in as a follower? Where did he get his confidence and boldness from? Don't feel wronged, because I can give you a wider horizon. I can let you rise to a higher level in martial arts. The 7 great vanishing lands, the 4 great dead valleys, the 3 great bottomless oceans, have you seen them before? Ling Han's sweet temptation followed. Although the 3 yin vanishing veins were a curse in nature, there was always hope in every situation. Their owner would also usually possess a heaven-grade spirit base. Once trained in 3 yin mysterious arts, the owner would naturally soar. Liu Yutong could not stop eagerness from rising within her heart. She had a passionate desire to pursue martial arts, and it was the focus of everything in her life. Chapter 4. Chapter 4, The First Command. Liu Yutong was affected in her heart, but to agree to become Ling Han's follower was an impossible request. Biting her red lips slightly, she spoke, "Change your condition." Ling Han smiled slightly. "You should be at the top of the 8th layer of element gathering tier, right? I'll gift you 2 verbal chants to show my sincerity. 3 yin supporting element, plan of square path, 3 flowers assemble at the apex, shattering the approach of heaven." At first, Liu Yutong was not concerned. This brat was only at the 2nd layer of body refining tier. What kind of shocking verbal chant could he know? He was most likely only pretending to be mysterious. But when she heard these 2 verbal chants, the origin energy within her body began to stir without reason, as if the door to the 9th level of element gathering tier was opening. She was moved. Although she knew that she would be able to break through to the 9th level of element gathering tier, but the estimated time should be around a month later. However, she had a strong feeling that now she only needed about a day. No, even right at this moment, she could enter seclusion and proceed to breakthrough. This was too much. It was just 2 verbal chants, and yet they had so much effect on her. Those were 2 verbal chants from 3 yin mysterious art. How is it? Ling Han smiled. Consecutively, he raised his voice and said, "Become my follower, and I will teach you supreme godly skills." Pu. Ling Zhongquan and group puffed, unable to hold back their hearty laughter any longer. What could be more hilarious than this? Just a piece of trash, and he wanted to have a genius from Huyang Academy become his follower? And even said he would teach her supreme godly skills. Such bragging skills and guts were truly remarkable, and probably the only things supreme and godly amongst his skills. The idiot had no measure of his own ability. It was such a joke. The maidservants covered their small mouths. They too knew Ling Han's background and, looking at the attitude that Ling Zhongquan displayed towards Liu Yutong, knew of how noble a status this young girl was. Liu Yutong's expression turned cold, and suddenly she had arrived in front of Ling Han. Her right hand flashed out and held his neck. "Recite 3 yin mysterious arts, or else I will kill you," she coldly said. Since Ling Han dared to ask such a thing from Liu Yutong, he naturally foresaw such a reaction from her, so he only smiled and said, "Then kill me. I wouldn't need to wait too long before I see you on the path to the netherworld. We can be travel companions at that time." Liu Yutong's hold tightened. Although her 5 fingers looked small and smooth, but at this moment, they seemed like iron claws, strangling Ling Han to the point of suffocation. Soon, his face turned red, and his eyes became bloodshot. Ling Han's 4 limbs started to twitch violently. Ling Zhongquan and his companions had no intention of interfering. In fact, their deepest hope was to have Liu Yutong kill Ling Han. "Are you going to say it or not?" Liu Yutong slightly loosened her grip. Ling Han forced out a smile, and shook his head determinedly. The current Ling clan was an extremely dangerous place to him. He had to find a strong bodyguard, and would not agree to whatever else Liu Yutong suggested to him. He had to make her his protector. What he lacked now was time. As long as he had the time he needed to become stronger, what did a mere Ling clan count as? Liu Yutong once again tightened her grip, and Ling Han's body started to twitch violently before his 4 limbs suddenly drooped. There was no more movement. How stubborn. Liu Yutong sighed internally, and her origin power rushed out and restarted Ling Han's heartbeat. Exhaling, Ling Han once again opened his eyes, and took in large mouthfuls of air. 3 years. Liu Yutong said, "No more than 3 years, and within these 3 years, I will obey your command." 3 years later, she would be 20 years old. If she would not lose consciousness and no longer awaken, then she would be completely free. Pu. Ling Zhongquan and his group once again made a snort-like sound with their mouths, but this time, it was because of their great shock. They were completely at a loss. Was there some problem with their hearing? They seemed to have heard Liu Yutong assent. Assent to become Ling Han's follower? To become an underling of a piece of trash? This, they must have heard wrongly. Definitely so. Ling Han came back to attention and smiled, before raising his hand. Deal. 3 years would be long enough for him to mature. At least, it would be long enough for him to rise above the level of Ling Zhongquan and his groupies. He would no longer have to worry about any threat to his life. Pa. Liu Yutong extended her hand as well, and joined it with his upraised palm. This was a promise between martial artists. What a delicate hand. When their palms were joined together, Ling Han could not help but feel his heart stir. Although he was once a strong warrior of the heaven tier, and furthermore, the Alchemy Emperor, and there were uncountable beautiful women who threw themselves at him in his previous life, since his soul had melded with his predecessors, it was as if he too had returned to a youthful, impulsive age. The passion that he had not experienced for a long time was burning inside his body, making him feel as if he truly had returned to the age of 16 years old. Ling Han enjoyed this kind of change. This was what living meant. Miss Liu, don't listen to the nonsense this little beast is spouting, let's return to discussing official matters, Ling Zhongquan interrupted. He didn't want Ling Han to continue making mess out of things. And that Zhong Yuan, he truly was an idiot. He couldn't even keep proper watch over a piece of trash. Once he returned, he'd make sure to kill him. Chief Butler, Ling Han coldly looked at him. This position in Huyang Academy is what my father risked his own life to obtain. Now my father is risking his life in Purple Light Ground Valley, and yet you shamelessly attempt to snatch this position. Don't you feel your face burning? Impudence, how dare you speak to me this way? Ling Zhongquan suddenly shouted. Liu Yutong previously did not bother about such a matter, but since she now had a deal with Ling Han, her attitude naturally changed. Butler Ling, what is going on here? I need an explanation. Ling Zhongquan could pretend he did not hear Ling Han's words, but he definitely would not be able to do the same with Liu Yutong's words. Not only was she the representative of Huyang Academy, her own ability was above his. What right did he have to ignore Liu Yutong's words? He hurriedly said, it's like this boy is the son of Ling clan head, Ling Dongxing. Thus, Ling Dongxing became selfish, and wanted to give this placement privately to this boy. I'm only thinking of the big picture, to make the most out of this precious position. What grand words, thinking of the big picture. Ling Han smiled coldly. Ling Zhongquan, are you completely without shame? This position was obtained by my father, who is risking his life even now as we speak. What does it have to do with the clan? Why do you need to concern yourself with it? You only want to give this position to your own grandchild, and in future, when his level exceeds my father's, he would be able to help you seize the position of clan head. You want to do such a shameless thing, yet claim to be doing it out of loyalty to the clan. What a shameless dog. Having received such a big, hearty scolding from Ling Han, Ling Zhongquan was furious to the point that his whole body was trembling. He had even come close to spitting out blood in anger. Little beast, how dare you insult me this way? Ling Zhongquan was filled with wrath. He was actually scolded by a piece of trash. If he could not heavily punish Ling Han, he would definitely be angered to the point of internal injury. Ling Han only calmly smiled, and turned to Liu Yutong. I have completely zero interest in enrolling at Huyang Academy. The agreement about the position is cancelled. In exchange, let Huyang Academy compensate me with some medicinal potions. Agreed. Liu Yutong nodded. To expend all efforts to cultivate an individual student would, in the first place, require a large pool of medicinal potions. No. Ling Zhongquan immediately shouted loudly. This position belongs to Mu Yun, none of you can steal it away. Old dog, is there something wrong with your hearing? This position was obviously obtained by my father, what does it have to do with you? Ling Han scoffed. Then he looked at Liu Yutong, saying, now, this is my first command for you. He paused for a moment before saying, restrain this old dog for me, I want to give a few good slaps to this shameless old bastard. Liu Yutong only hesitated for a moment before she nodded. All right. Ling Han had already expressed his sincerity by gifting her 2 valuable verbal chants. Now, she too had to express her own sincerity. What? Liu Yutong truly agreed to become Ling Han's follower? The word follower seemed grand, but in truth, it was something like an attendant, a servant. A grand genius from Huyang Academy actually agreed to become someone else's follower? What was this inconceivable affair? But it was reality. Liu Yutong had already stood up, her beautiful eyes focused on Ling Zhongquan, and a fierce battle spirit exuded from her graceful figure. Elder sister disciple Liu, don't be deceived by this brat. Ling Muyun yelled, his face filled with shock. He had no way to accept the fact that a talented, intelligent woman like Liu Yutong would actually be deceived by Ling Han's flowery word. Particularly when this stunning beauty was someone he wanted to do his utmost to pursue. Now, it was as if he had eaten 10,000 flesh, felt completely suffocated. Are you going to surrender, or will you wait for me to act? Liu Yutong asked calmly. Chapter 5. Chapter 5, Thrashing the Old Dog. Liu Yutong was absolutely confident. She was at the 8th layer of element gathering tier, while Ling Zhongquan was only at the 6th layer of element gathering tier. Even though there was only 2 layers difference between the two, one was from the late stage of element gathering, while the other was only in the middle stage. This was the difference of a major level. Ling Zhongquan was both shocked and angered. Miss Liu, are you really going to help this little beast? Old dog, watch what you say, Ling Han said unhurriedly from the side. These words completely infuriated Ling Zhongquan and his companions. You keep saying old dog this, old dog that, and yet you want others to watch their mouths. So the magistrate is free to burn down houses, yet the commoners are forbidden to even light lamps. Too overbearing. Ling Han smiled calmly. He was overbearing, but what of it? In his previous life, he was famous for sweeping his mistakes under the rug and helping those close to him no matter whether they were in the right or in the wrong. In front of outsiders, he would defend his people. Whoever was in the right or in the wrong, he'd discuss that behind closed doors later. Ling Zhongquan, his sons and grandson had gone much too far. With his personality, it'd be strange if he could tolerate such a thing. Liu Yutong did not respond. Her graceful figure flew out as if she was a goddess from heaven, both hands pressing onto Ling Zhongquan, without any ferocity and displaying a sense of unworldly beauty. However, Ling Zhongquan naturally did not feel this way. Cold sweat had already gathered on his forehead. He was in the middle stage of element gathering tier, but the other was in the late stage of that tier. This was an unbreachable gulf. But Ling Zhongquan definitely did not want to be thrashed by Ling Han, this piece of trash, even more so since the latter was a member of the younger generation. Thus, he had to resist with all his might. Even if resistance was futile, he would flee if it came to the worse. Pang! He launched the Ling clan special skill, 3 flip hands, and advanced towards Liu Yutong. This was a martial skill from the medium level of yellow grade, and was also one of the 3 special skills belonging to the Ling clan. With these 3 skills, Ling clan became one of the 2 most powerful clans in Grey Cloud Town. The power of these skills was naturally fearsome. Unfortunately, his opponent happened to be Liu Yutong. Snapping of the plum hands. The icy beauty spat out lightly. Her small hands smoothly turned over, both as a clap and as a touch. Her movement was indescribably graceful, but its power was extremely fearsome. Her hands drew past, and Ling Zhongquan could only repeatedly retreat, his whole face turning red. Snapping of the plum hands, a martial skill from the high level of yellow grade. His cultivation was suppressed, his martial skills were suppressed. If there was any advantage that Ling Zhongquan could claim over his opponent, then that would be multiple years' worth of battle experience he had. But the problem was that Liu Yutong was a genius of martial Dao. Although she did not have adequate experience, she had a shocking battle comprehension ability that could completely compensate for her inferior battle experience. How could Ling Zhongquan not lose? Through only 50 or 60 moves, Ling Zhongquan was completely restrained, his dantian was restrained, his origin energy could not be circulated, and he was no stronger than a commoner. Grandfather. Father. Ling Mu-yun and the rest were all shouting. They wanted to rush forward but were too afraid of Liu Yutong's ability, and could only look at Ling Han with fury. They were completely devoid of any intention of self-reflecting, and only felt that it was all Ling Han's fault. If Ling Han had not appeared, then matters would have proceeded as they had planned. Ling Han looked at Liu Yutong, and said, "If you make a slight change to your battle style, you will be even more powerful. For example, during your 17th move, you only had to further lower your right hand, and with your left hand clapping 2 inches further forward, you would have already restrained your opponent." Liu Yutong had not been convinced at first. She only thought that Ling Han had found some kind of ancient treasury, and had thus obtained high-level secret arts. Thus, he was able to use 2 verbal chants to allow the barrier she faced to loosen, and make her soon be able to break through. But now that she recalled the previous battle, the expression on her face changed slightly. Ling Han was right. If she had done as he just said, she would have been able to end this battle much sooner. She could not help feeling a little reverence towards Ling Han. His insight was too fearsome. Ling Han smiled internally. Who was he? 10,000 years ago, he was considered a royal existence in the world of martial art. Don't tell me that he would not be able to subdue a little girl. He walked towards Ling Zhongquan, and raised his right hand. Little beast, you dare. Ling Zhongquan glared. If he were to be thrashed by Ling Han, how would he face others in future? Pa. Ling Han's palm descended without any hesitation, giving Ling Zhongquan a heavy slap. Sigh. The other 3 members of the Ling clan and the 5 maidservants simultaneously took in a breath of cold air. He actually did it. The Grand Chief Butler of the Ling clan was actually publicly slapped by a person everyone acknowledged as trash. SSS, no wonder this old dog has such thick skin, just hitting him hurts my hand, Ling Han said with bared teeth. This was natural. Body refining tear meant to use origin power to refine each part of the body and to allow every muscle to be filled with origin power. Every punch and kick would release a fearsome amount of power. Ling Zhongquan was already in the element gathering tier, and has already completely passed through the body refining tier. Thus, his face was naturally completely refined by origin power. Someone from the middle stage of body refining tier may not even able to truly injure him, and only cause him a small pain. To cause him to bleed would require the use of weapons. However, now it was no longer the issue of being injured, but of humiliation. Slapped by a piece of trash who was also a younger relative at the 2nd layer of body refining tier. Moreover, this was done in front of 5 maidservants. What kind of great humiliation was this? If this matter spread out, how would he be able to face others in future? Ling Zhongquan's eyes were about to spit fire. He shouted loudly, "Little beast, this matter would not end like this. You will definitely regret this, definitely. Ari, you actually dare to threaten me in front of my follower, what stupidity." Ling Han sighed, and asked Liu Yutong, "Someone is threatening your master, what do you say we should do?" Liu Yutong's beautiful face twitched. She was the princess of the Liu clan. How could she be able to get used to being someone's follower? However, she was still someone who kept her promises, so she immediately asked, "Do you need me to kill him?" Hearing these words, the 2 sons of Ling Zhongquan and Ling Mu-yun were shocked. Ling Zhongquan was their backbone, the tree that held up their sky. If Ling Zhongquan died, then they too would lose all the power they had in the Ling clan. Ling Han shook his head with a smile. "This old dog belongs to my father, so my father should be the one to get rid of him." But, he snapped off a table leg, and weighed it in his hand. He will not be punished with death, but he will not be able to escape another punishment. Pang! He raised the table leg and smacked it on Ling Zhongquan's face. After a heavy sound rang out, Ling Zhongquan opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood and broken teeth. "Old dog, my father is risking his life, yet you snatch away his hope. Don't you think you deserve some thrashing? You have your son and grandson, and my father doesn't. Yesterday, you counted on the fact that you were stronger than me, and cruelly beat me to the point of serious injury. Is this the kind of attitude an older relative should have? Since you are without shame, and don't want to act as an older relative, then why do I still have to bother thinking of your face and treat you as an elder?" Ling Han thrashed him as he talked. A few hits afterwards, Ling Zhongquan's hair was already all over the place, his face covered with blood. He had already lost at least half the teeth in his mouth. However, although Ling Zhongquan looked pitiful, it did not matter how serious his external injury was, as he would be able to recover from it quickly thanks to the powerful life energy of a martial artist. It had taken internal injury to actually endanger his life. Thus, Ling Han continued thrashing him cheerfully, completely unconcerned that he could actually beat the other to death. Ling Zhongquan no longer made any sound, but he swore in his heart that, in the future, when he had the ability to surpass Ling Dongxing, he would definitely tear this pair of father and son into pieces. My hand's getting tired. Ling Han threw away the stick, and said, Yu Tong, accompany me on a trip. Yu Tong. Liu Yu Tong suddenly felt a shiver. This manner of address really gave her goosebumps. Chapter 6. Chapter 6, Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. Ling Han and Liu Yu Tong departed. Ling Mu Yun and others wanted to stop them but didn't dare to act. Even Ling Zhongquan was defeated. Who else in the Ling clan had the power to resist? None, unless Ling Dongxing returned, that is. However, even if Ling Dongxing returned, which side would he be on? That was obvious. The 5 maidservants had extremely colorful expressions. They have watched such an interesting show that it'd be enough for them to brag about for 3 years. Where are we going? Liu Yu Tong asked Ling Han after leaving the Ling clan grounds. Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. Ling Han replied. Liu Yu Tong made an O. She thought that Ling Han would be prescribing her medicine. After all, she was a patient. The two walked quickly, and after only 10 minutes, they reached their destination. Heaven's Medicine Pavilion was a very powerful existence, and had a branch in every city in Rain Country. Whether there were any branches outside of Rain Country, Ling Han wasn't too sure due to his limited knowledge. Anyway, the variety of medicinal plants and pills in Heaven's Medicine Pavilion should be more than enough, as they should have every kind available on market. If something couldn't be bought there, then it definitely could not be bought in other places as well. Ling Han entered the pavilion and approached a counter. Behind it sat a very beautiful young girl. Seeing Ling Han walk over, she immediately stood up with a smile, and said, Hello, my name is Xiao Dao. I'm honored to be of service. Her eyes focused on Liu Yu Tong for a moment. After all, this young girl was unusually beautiful, even she felt slightly captivated despite being female herself. Ling Han nodded, saying, I would like to buy violet lotus grass, blue branch fruit, 100-year vermilion bamboo, red-leafed potato, rotted-leafed dead tree roots. Xiao Dao's face went completely blank. She had been working here for over 2 years, and yet had never heard even the names of these 5 medicinal plants. She stared blankly for a moment before saying, Customers, I apologize, but I haven't even heard of these medicinal plants. Please wait for a moment, I will ask someone else on your behalf. All right, Ling Han nodded. These 5 medicinal plants were indeed quite uncommon, because aside from using them to concoct the element heart recover spirit powder, they were very rarely used for other concoctions. And even though the element heart recover spirit powder was not a high-grade concoction, it was a medicine he created personally during his previous life. Although he had taught the formula to a few people, it may not have been passed down through the generations. After a while, they saw Xiao Dao and a middle-aged man around 30 years of age walk towards them. Are you the one who's causing trouble? The middle-aged man looked at Ling Han, his face filled with disdain. Ling Han frowned. What do you mean, causing trouble? Bah, randomly naming some non-existent medicinal plants, isn't this purposely causing trouble? The middle-aged man harumphed, his facial expression proclaiming silently, Ha, I've seen through you. Ling Han asked, Why do you think that I just randomly named some non-existent medicinal plants? Aren't you asking nonsense? I'm a grand alchemist from the medium level of yellow grade. Even I have never heard of these medicinal plants, so aren't you just randomly naming them? Get out of here. The middle-aged man waved his hand as if he was shooing away flies. His name was Ma Da Jun, and he was indeed an alchemist at the medium level of yellow grade. There were other customers in the shop, and once they heard his words, they all let out an O sound, their faces filled with respect. Alchemist was a very scarce and noble profession. There were 4 major grades in the profession: heaven, earth, black, yellow. Every grade was further divided into 3 minor levels: high, medium, and low levels. However, even an alchemist from the medium level of the yellow grade was a welcomed and respected existence, someone all major powers would fight to have. It was like that also in Grey Cloud Town. There was only one alchemist of this rank, and he worked in Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. Usually, he didn't even need to concoct any medicinal pills. The purpose behind his presence was simply being an overseer. Thus, Ma Da-jun naturally had enough of a reason to be prideful. Even Alchemist Ma has said so, this brat must indeed have come to cause trouble. What a joke, he actually came to Heaven's Medicine Pavilion to misbehave. Where did this fool come from? Maybe he's come to please the audience. Everyone was on the side of Ma Da-jun. An alchemist was an extremely noble existence, and thus their partiality was hardly surprising. Ling Han was slightly irritated, and said, "If you've never heard of them, that's because of your own lack of ability. How can you without any basis proclaim that others are just causing trouble? Go and ask for the most well-educated person in your shop, I shall speak to him. Who do you think you are to command me?" Ma Da-jun similarly looked extremely unhappy. He had come out personally to expose him, so why was he still here, being a pest? Moreover, Ma Da-jun was the person in charge of this Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. Who else would be better educated than him here? Naturally, that was excluding Grandmaster Zhu. The other was just here on a holiday when he suddenly had a flash of inspiration, and so was just borrowing this Heaven's Medicine Pavilion's facilities to concoct pills. Seeing this, the corners of Liu Yutong's lips slightly lifted, and looked a little expectant. She would not act this time. Heaven's Medicine Pavilion was a colossal existence. Even the imperial family of Rain Country would have to treat them with respect. She was only a member of the younger generation of the Liu clan, so she definitely could not accompany Ling Han to mess around in this place. "Aren't you quite capable? Why are you being embarrassed now?" Although she agreed to become Ling Han's follower, it was just temporary. Moreover, with her pride, that was something she was most unwilling to dote least at present. Thus, she really wanted to see Ling Han's embarrassed face. However cold a woman was, she would still want to retaliate when made unhappy. "Get lost." Ma Da-jun brushed off his hands, looking impatient. "You won't regret this," Ling Han slowly said. "Haha, what can you do to me?" Ma Da-jun felt unreasonably tickled. This young man actually dared to threaten him. The other people in the shop too looked as if they were watching a comedy. Was this young man a spoiled young master from some clan? However, even if he was the son of the clan head of either one of the 2 great clans, he would still not be qualified to stand against a medium-level alchemist of the yellow grade. Ling Han only smiled, and turned towards Liu Yutong. A feeling of despise flashed through Liu Yutong's heart. Was he going to ask her to take action again? However, she only heard Ling Han say, "Help me shout loudly you've put too much Copper Valley sand. Do it 3 times, the louder the better." What did that mean? Liu Yutong's beautiful eyes widened, but when she saw the confidence on Ling Han's face, her heart trembled and she couldn't help but do as he told her. "You've put too much Copper Valley sand. You've put too much Copper Valley sand. You've put too much Copper Valley sand." She was a person from the element gathering tier, so her shout was like a lion's roar. "You're both crazy, chase them out of here," Ma Da-jun furiously said to the 2 guards in the shop. Peng! A loud noise echoed out, as if something had exploded. Any alchemist would be able to tell that this noise was caused by an exploding furnace, something that every alchemist would experience. Tong, 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 tong. A series of footsteps was heard from upstairs. Very quickly, a white-haired elder appeared at the top of the staircase, and shot right in front of Liu Yutong like an arrow, excitedly asking, "How do you know that I've put in too much Copper Valley sand?" The elder's figure still had some traces of suffering from a furnace's explosion. His brow, beard, and hair were all partially burned and half his face was blackened with ashes. His clothes were likewise in disarray, covered in singes. Being intently stared at by such an old man, the odd feeling within Liu Yutong's heart could be imagined. But what caused her greater surprise was the silver emblem hanging on one side of the elder's chest. That was the sign of an alchemist, and silver represented black grade. One emblem represented low level. This elder was a low-level alchemist of the black grade. Goodness, this kind of existence, even in the great clans of the imperial city, would be considered a revered guest. Even the clan head of her Liu clan, faced with the other, would have to very politely address the other as Grandmaster. But now, this Grandmaster was actually looking at her with a fawning gaze, his face filled with the desire to seek knowledge. How would Liu Yutong not feel odd? She couldn't help looking at Ling Han. How many other mysteries was this young man hiding? Chapter 7. Chapter 7, Grandmaster Zhu. Pu. Seeing this scene, everyone in this medicine shop could not help exhaling sharply in shock. Even if there were some who did not know Grandmaster Zhu Hixin, they could tell from the silver emblem hanging on his breast that he was a low-level alchemist of the black grade. Black grade. To the common people, this was an indescribably noble identity that could be compared to the high-ranking court officials of the empire. It was even more noble a status than a mayor of a city enjoyed. But someone like this, a grandmaster, displayed such an expression just because of one word. How could they not be shocked? And the cause of everything was a young man. How was this possible? Many people were driven mad. This fact was something they couldn't accept, even if they shattered their heads. Ma Jun particularly looked quite aghast. This Grandmaster Zhu was an important personage in Heaven's Medicine Pavilion branch in Rain Country. He actually wasn't even able to see such a person normally. He had only heard of some of the others' affairs through rumors. So how could he not be shocked, seeing this expression on the Grandmaster's face? Could it be that this brat was not here to cause trouble? Were the medicinal plants he named real? Ling Han sniffed a little and said, "Well, you're quite clever, making a few changes to the formula for the wind and fire pill, using purple backbear pill, 1000 shred cane and black rock powder to replace a few of the more valuable ingredients. In this manner, there would not be much difference in the medicinal effects, yet production cost could be greatly lowered." "How did you know?" Zhu Hixin suddenly turned around and looked at Ling Han in shock, asking in a rough voice. This was his secret. He had planned on publicizing it only after he had succeeded, so as to give a good shock to some of his old friends and rivals. Ling Han's smile widened, and he said, "Naturally, I used my nose to sniff it out." "Are you a monster? You found out just by using your nose?" Pill formulae were an extremely valuable item, and no alchemist would easily reveal their formulae to others. To an alchemist, it was something as important as martial arts skills to a warrior. The problem was, even Zhu Hixin himself had not yet successfully completed his research on the improved medicinal pill formula, but Ling Han could analyze the formula just by using his nose. How could Zhu Hixin not be completely shocked by this? Your improved formula is feasible, but Copper Valley sand is too strong, and the merging point is too high. So no matter how well ground it is, there will still be remnants within the completed pill, which will affect the quality of the pill. You can try using the teeth of Raging Flames leopard as a replacement, Ling Han suggested. In his previous life, he had casually corrected a few people, and they later went on to become Grandmaster-level alchemists. Zhu Hixin immediately started calculating in his heart, muttering, "Raging Flames leopard's elemental alignment is fire, which just happens to neutralize the yin alignment of the black rock powder, and when reaching a specific high temperature, will melt easily. So there won't be any remnants in the medical pill. Wonderful, truly wonderful. Why didn't I think of that?" The old man was dumbfounded. Looking at Ling Han with a fierce gaze, he immediately said, "Young friend, please accompany me upstairs, and allow me to receive you." Of course, the reception part was false. He wanted to sneakily hoax him into revealing a few more pill formulae. From what he's seen, Ling Han should be an heir to some influential family well-versed in alchemical arts. Ling Han smiled, but said, "I can't." "Why not?" Zhu Hixin became frantic. This boy was very possibly a walking encyclopedia of pill formulae. "Someone told me to get out," Ling Han said in a deliberate tone, glancing at Ma Jun. "Putong." Ma Jun fell onto his knees. At this moment, he really wanted to cry but had no tears. How should he have known that Zhu Hixin would treat Ling Han this way? Had he known, he would have even respected Ling Han as an elder. Now what was he supposed to do? He couldn't stop the ugly expression on his face from showing. The other people in the shop were all watching and shaking their heads in their hearts. Had Ma Jun been slightly more polite in his speech and not so forceful in his attitude, he would still have a way out now. He had brought this onto himself. Zhu Hixin immediately turned his head, his wrinkled face showing a fearsome anger. How could he not be angered? As an alchemist, the one thing he sought in his entire life was to raise his own level in the arts of alchemy and obtain more pill formulae. Now, here was an obvious encyclopedia of pill formulae, and that guy actually asked him to get lost. Did he bore some hatred towards him? Fool! He shouted in anger, "What's going on here? Explain to me." Ma Jun wanted to die. Under the interrogation of Zhu Hixin, he did not dare not to answer, so he just recounted the incident that happened previously while stammering. Although he did not attempt to distort the facts, the insulting words he spoke to Ling Han were naturally not repeated. He wasn't that much of an idiot. "What great authority you have." Zhu Hixin immediately gave him a hearty slap, causing Ma Jun to spin around on the spot 3 times before finally stopping, completely silly from the beating. "You haven't heard of them, so that means they don't exist. Should all the hundreds of thousands of medicinal plants you haven't heard of be removed from this world then? Let me tell you, these 5 medicinal plants indeed do exist. Violet lotus grass can be found in Eaglewood Valley, blue branch fruit can be found in one of the valleys in 100-linked mountains, 100-year vermilion bamboo grows in areas of extreme yang, red-leafed potato is found underneath volcanic ash, only rotted leafed dried tree roots is rarer, it can only be found underneath the old roots of a tree that has rotted for more than 100 years. I was wrong. I was wrong. Ma Jun kept apologizing in panic. What else was there to suspect if even Zhu Hixin himself had said so? He stretched out his hand and slapped himself, saying, "I shouldn't have been conceited, I shouldn't have behaved like a snob." Zhu Hixin once again turned to Ling Han, and said, "Young friend, many apologies, many apologies." He suddenly started, because he recalled that before he left his master, he had heard his master mention a particular formula. That was a medication used for healing injuries inflicted on the spirit base, and it required the 5 types of medicinal plants that Ling Han had wanted to buy. That time, his master had sighed with regret and said that although this formula did not require to be refined into the form of a medicinal pill, the effects were unexpectedly excellent. Unfortunately, possibly due to passage of time, only the names of some of the main ingredients were known, yet the actual method of creation was long lost. As such, it left a very strong impression on him, and now he had suddenly recalled everything. Could it be that Ling Han was buying these medicinal ingredients to concoct the element heart recover spirit powder? The old man couldn't help the increasingly rapid beating of his heart. If he could get this formula and burn it as an offering to his late master, then his esteemed master would feel happy in the afterlife. "Young friend, the medicinal ingredients you're buying, could it be that you want to concoct element heart recover spirit powder?" Ling Han nodded, and truthfully said, "My spirit base has been slightly injured." Pu. Ma Jun immediately puffed in shock. Damage to the spirit base was fatal to any martial artist. From what he knew, there was no way to completely recover from it. But Ling Han's words seemed to show that coming up with a remedy for it was a piece of cake for him. Liu Yu Tong's eyes brightened as well. She was Liu clan's princess, and although she herself was not an alchemist, she knew that there were a lot of extremely valuable medicinal pills, like the permanent moon pill, that could heal injuries to the spirit base. The problem was, the value of the permanent moon pill was indescribably high. Even the Liu clan would need to sacrifice colossal wealth to get merely one of them, and they might not be able to buy one even then. Ling Han, Ling Han, how many secrets are you hiding? She was getting more and more curious about Ling Han. Now, even if Ling Han said that he didn't want her as a follower anymore, she reckoned her personal curiosity would make her stay. Chapter 8. Chapter 8, Subdued. Young friend, please take a seat. Zhu Hixin politely invited, displaying extreme solicitousness, without showing any arrogance typical of a black-grade alchemist. "I can guarantee that within 5 days, no, 3 days, I'll have the medicinal ingredients that you require delivered to you." Good. Ling Han nodded. In his last life, His position was at the absolute summit, but he was weak now, so he might as well befriend a couple more people and extend his social network. Meanwhile, for a small character like Ma Jun, a small punishment was enough. He would not lower himself to the same level as him. Zhu Hixin was delighted and hurriedly led Ling Han and Liu Yutong to an elegant study on the 3rd floor. "If I may ask, who is young friend's master?" the old man asked. "I have no master, I'm self-taught," Ling Han said. In his last life, he had visited many powerful authorities of alchemical arts and mastered everything. In the end, he formed his own faction, and became the greatest alchemist in history. Zhu Hixin naturally did not believe him. Ling Han was so young, how was it possible for him to have such a deep knowledge of alchemy? However, he was very impressed with Ling Han, and had the intention to make him join Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. Thus, he asked him numerous questions to examine Ling Han's skill level. Ling Han calmly answered all his questions. He was a grandmaster alchemist. Whether in the past or in the present, who could compare to him in the field of alchemy? As their conversation continued, the leading role gradually fell into his hands. He occasionally caused Zhu Hixin to rack his brains in ponder, and the old man's face became more and more respectful. There was no seniority in academics. Whoever has the ability becomes the teacher. In the beginning, the old man kept addressing him young friend, placing himself on a higher position, but very quickly, he changed his manner of address, and addressed Ling Han as fellow alchemist. In the end, with his forehead beaded with cold sweat, he couldn't help standing up and respectfully standing at Ling Han's side to listen closely to his teachings, as if he was an apprentice. It was just like when he used to be taught by his esteemed master. In his heart, Ling Han had already reached a very high position. He even had a kind of feeling if only considering theory and insight, Ling Han had far surpassed his own master. "Grandmaster, may I follow by your side, and continue to listen to your teachings?" When Zhu Hixin said this, Liu Yutong was almost shocked to death. But after she carefully thought it over, it seemed to be the natural order of events. However, if this was known by the other great clans in the imperial city, she was afraid that everyone would die of envy. This was an actual black-grade alchemist. Although he was only a low-level one, the title of black-grade was more than enough, wasn't it? Liu Yutong was astonished, and her resistance to the idea of being Ling Han's follower decreased slightly. Even a grandmaster alchemist like Zhu Hixin was begging to follow Ling Han, so what did she have to complain about? Ling Han shook his head, and said, "At this moment, I have no intention to take on any disciples." In truth, Zhu Hixin's talent in the field of alchemy, in his opinion, could only be considered ordinary. In the past, he had taken on 3 disciples, and all 3 of them were exceptionally talented. Zhu Hixin only felt that it was a pity, and furthermore fully realized that Ling Han refused because his natural talent in alchemy was ordinary, therefore he was not qualified to become his disciple. He too felt that this was natural. After all, Ling Han's knowledge and skill in the field of alchemy was at too high a level, one which he was only able to admire and look up to from afar. To become the other's disciple was indeed too much to hope for. Liu Yutong was dumbstruck that Ling Han had actually refused. He refused. This person was an actual low-level black-grade alchemist, and as long as Zhu Hixin agreed, even the imperial family of Rain Country would fall over themselves to meet him, and maybe would even gift him with a princess's hand in marriage. However, Ling Han had actually refused him without much consideration. This guy was really incomprehensible. However, if you encounter any trouble with understanding something, you can still come to the Ling clan to look for me whenever you like, Ling Han said. "Many thanks, Grandmaster, many thanks, Grandmaster." Zhu Hixin repeatedly raised his clasped hands in Ling Han's direction, his face revealing the utter joy he was feeling. Liu Yutong felt speechless in her mind. If this scene was seen by others, they would definitely be so shocked that their eyeballs would fall out of their socket. A person with the noble status of a black-grade alchemist was actually performing the salutations of a disciple in front of Ling Han, feeling honored merely because of being able to visit here. Then I'll take my leave," Ling Han said. "Let me see you off, Grandmaster," Zhu Hixin quickly said. "Oh, right. Yutong, did you bring any money with you? Help me pay for medicine in advance." Ling Han turned towards Liu Yutong and said. Liu Yutong, of course, now knew that this medication was intended for Ling Han himself and not for her illness, so she couldn't stop her lips from twitching, thinking that this guy really knew how to make the best use of everything. He had just taken her in as a follower and now he was aiming for her purse. No need, no need. Zhu Hixin hurriedly waved his hands. The alchemical knowledge he heard from Ling Han today was invaluable. How could he bear to take Ling Han's payment for the medicinal ingredients? Great Master, please do allow me to express some of my gratitude by waiving the payment. Ling Han pondered for a moment, then said, then do as you like. Though he had only casually taught Zhu Hixin a bit, he was the actual alchemy emperor. This little bit of teaching would be enough for Zhu Hixin to benefit from for the rest of his life. Zhu Hixin immediately looked delighted. To be able to do something for Ling Han, even if it was only such a small favor, made him extremely elated. He even felt honored. Then I'll buy some return origin pills, Ling Han said after thinking for a while. Return origin pill, this kind of cheap thing, how can I let Grandmaster buy it? Anyway, it's something I can casually create, so naturally, it'll be a gift to Grandmaster, Zhu Hixin quickly said. Liu Yutong was once again rendered speechless. Return origin pill could allow a martial artist to quickly recover his origin power. It was an indispensable support during combat, and it was not something simple that could be casually created. Although Ling Han only required the lowest level lower grade return origin pills, even one of them would be worth 3 silver coins at least. Zhu Hixin was very generous, immediately giving Ling Han 100 return origin pills. If it was not for the fact that Ling Han was still only in the body refining tier and could only take low-level return origin pills, he would definitely have presented him with high-level return origin pills instead. Ling Han and Liu Yutong descended down the stairs and left, seen off by Zhu Hixin. Where are we going now? Liu Yutong could not help asking after the two had walked for a while. Ling Han smiled slightly, and said, naturally home, to wait for the medicine to be delivered. Without healing the spirit base first, he had no way to start cultivating. Liu Yutong curiously asked, you really know how to concoct pills? There should be no one on this world who knows that better than me, Ling Han bluntly said. You're bragging. Liu Yutong harumphed. Although Ling Han had completely subdued Zhu Hixin was only a black-grade alchemist. There were still alchemists of earth grade and heaven grade above him. Ling Han did not argue with her. His status had long been engraved in history. Why didn't you agree to let Grandmaster Zhu follow by your side? He's not only an alchemist, but also a warrior of Gushing Spring tier, Liu Yutong asked. Ling Han paused in his step, turned over to look at her, and continued walking forwards, saying, first, your spirit base is of heaven grade, and you've now reached the 8th level of element gathering tier, so you're one step away from breaking through to Gushing Spring tier. Second, I don't need anyone to concoct pills for me. Third, if I really need to have someone by my side, then a beautiful girl is far easier on the eyes than an old man. Liu Yutong could not help but be speechless. However, his words did cause her to be a little pleased deep within her heart. We'll go home first. I still have to teach you 3 yin mysterious arts, Ling Han said. Liu Yutong could not help feeling a bit excited and her steps quickened. The illness that caused her to fall asleep without reason has troubled her for far too many years. The two returned to the Ling clan residence. On the whole way, all servants they saw were wearing peculiar expressions. They had heard of what had happened that morning, that the chief butler had actually been trashed by young Master Trash. It wasn't too surprising for them to know about it, for this kind of news would naturally spread throughout the whole clan quite quickly. Ling Han pretended to see nothing and brought Liu Yutong to his room to start teaching her 3 yin mysterious arts. Aren't you afraid I'll go back on my word? Liu Yutong suddenly asked when Ling Han was about to recite the arts. Will you? Ling Han asked in return. Chapter 9. Chapter 9, Guiding Cultivation. If it was half a day ago, Liu Yutong really would consider casting Ling Han aside. Get the cultivation technique through deception first, and then compensate Ling Han with some material objects is what she thought. Who asked Ling Han to ignore her noble status as the princess of a noble family and insist on having her as his follower? Yet now, she was hesitant. The reserved nature of a girl caused her to really want to leave Ling Han's side, but once she recalled the endless miracles Ling Han had displayed, she wanted to stay at his side, curious to see where his limits were. Maybe yes, maybe not. Who can say for sure? She gave him an ambiguous answer. Ling Han laughed heartily. If Liu Yutong had solemnly vowed to be steadfastly loyal to him, he would not have believed her. However, he was a grand warrior of the Heaven Tier and the Alchemy Emperor. How could he be unable to subdue this little slip of a girl? Take off your clothes, he casually said. Liu Yutong suddenly looked furious. Could Ling Han want to force her to sacrifice her body in exchange for teaching her the cultivation technique? Although she didn't want to die, and really did very much want her illness cured, if she had to use her body in exchange, then she would rather die. Don't misunderstand. Ling Han said with a smile, I only want to guide you in the circulation path of the origin power. This particular cultivation technique requires the origin power in your body to circulate through many odd paths and can't be explained simply through words. You should know yourself that the slightest difference leads to a huge loss, so if there is the tiniest discrepancy in the circulation of the cultivation technique, that's why we must make sure that there is no any discrepancy or error at all. Liu Yutong paused. Ling Han's words were not false. There were uncountable veins and arteries within human body. If there was the tiniest bit of error in the circulation path of origin power, then the results would be vastly different. The problem was that she was an unmarried young lady. How could she take off all her clothes and allow a man's finger to roam over her whole body? She considered for a long while, then suggested a compromise. She would keep her undergarments on, and Ling Han would use a chopstick instead of a finger in guiding the circulation of her origin power. Get out first, Liu Yutong said, pointing outside. Hey, this is my room. Ling Han laughed, but he still stood up and walked outside. He still had this little bit of gentlemanly character. He waited for a long while before he finally heard Liu Yutong say, You can come in now. Ling Han entered the room to see Liu Yutong seated on the bed, her beautiful figure concealed by a bedsheet, her beautiful hair falling over her shoulders like a waterfall. She was very enchanting. She really is a captivating and extraordinarily beautiful girl, Ling Han thought. Even considering the demanding eyesight he had in his last life, he couldn't help but admit that the charm of this icy beauty caused his heart to slightly stir. Snow-white teeth, biting red lips, beautiful eyes roaming around, looking both resentful and pitiful, Liu Yutong slowly slipped out of the bedsheet, and her beautiful, jade-like figure appeared. There was only a tube top on her upper body, and her fair, smooth skin was like the highest grade of jade, exuding an entrancing luster. She wore underpants on her lower body, but she had torn the trouser legs from her upper thigh downwards, revealing two long, straight legs. They were neither too plump nor too thin, rather, they could be considered perfect, causing one's heartbeat to speed up. Seeing Ling Han's roaming eyes, she couldn't help feeling embarrassed. Her beautiful, jade-like face blushed, adding on to her allure. Goodness, she was supposed to be an icy beauty, but now that she was blushing, she suddenly became a universal temptation, looking so enchanting that even Ling Han's heaven-tier temperament from his last life was slightly disturbed, causing him to want to devour this captivating little demon. But he quickly came back to his senses and said, Sit in a cross-legged position. I'll be teaching you the first level of mental cultivation method from 3 Yin mysterious arts. He recited it word by word. At first Liu Yutong couldn't enter into the right state of mind. After all, she was almost naked in the same room with a man, but her martial artist's heart very quickly defeated her embarrassment as she listened carefully to Ling Han's verbal chants, committing them to her memory. Ling Han spoke very quickly, but Liu Yutong showed shocking talent. It was almost like whatever she heard, she would never forget. Ling Han only recited everything twice, and Liu Yutong already managed to remember almost 1,000 words worth of verbal chants. This was only the first step. The next step, and also the key factor, was the circulation path of the origin power. Ling Han, using a chopstick in place of his finger, lightly drew all over Liu Yutong's beautiful figure, guiding her in circulating her origin power. Once, twice, only 3 times were enough for Liu Yutong to already circulate her origin power according to the new cultivation technique. She truly deserved the title genius. Ling Han hurriedly departed from the room. This little demon was really too enchanting. He seemed to have overestimated his own willpower. If things continued in the same way, he very possibly would end up taking advantage of and pushing down this entrancing beauty. Since Liu Yutong had already started cultivation, she would definitely not regain consciousness in the short term. Thus Ling Han decided to just sit outside and similarly begin cultivating. However, he was not cultivating 5 elements heaven grade skill. Instead, he began cultivating indestructible heaven scroll. Because his spirit base was not healed yet, he did not dare to take any risks. If his spirit base was injured further, then it would not be healed even by element heart recover spirit powder. The circulation of indestructible heaven scroll was like a bottomless pit, very quickly expending the little origin power he had within his body to refine his muscles, veins and bones and make them stronger. If it was cultivated to the limit, then the body would neither deteriorate nor age. Even if a meteor crashed into him, the meteor would shatter while he would be completely unharmed. Of course, he was much too far from reaching that state. After merely 5 minutes, the origin power stored within his body was completely exhausted, so he swallowed a return origin pill to quickly recover the origin power within his body and then continue cultivation. Each medicine has poisonous properties. In the beginning, the return origin pill could exhibit the best effects, but as the amount he took increased, the immunity of his body to the pill's effects also largely increased, causing the pill's effects to worsen until, finally, he could only recover less than 1/10 of his origin power after taking a pill. Ling Han stopped. The day had ended. To continue cultivation would be of no effect. However, his improvement was very obvious. His muscles, veins and bones have all become slightly stronger. According to his estimate, this kind of strength would compare to the 3rd level of body refining tier. No wonder it was called Heaven Scroll. It was awesome. In his last life, Ling Han had also cultivated a few recovery type skills, like Golden Body Secrets and Boulder Technique, which allowed the body to become stronger. However, their effects could not compare to Indestructible Heaven Scroll's effectiveness. The difference between them was like that between heaven and earth. That was normal. If Indestructible Heaven Scroll was not that good, how could it be possible that a warrior of the heaven tier would need to spend over 10,000 years to comprehend it? Not to mention, even then it was only the first layer he comprehended. However, cultivating this Indestructible Heaven Scroll really expends a lot of origin power, and would still need a large amount of valuable medicines to support refining the body. This would definitely delay my cultivation. However, this Indestructible Heaven Scroll has too great a power, the delay would be worth it. My spirit base is immortal grade, anyway. I shouldn't think about the highest tier of neither deteriorating nor aging body yet. The first level of Indestructible Heaven Scroll is also further divided into 4 tiers, which are respectively the Dead Tree tier, the Rock Cliff tier, the Iron Sheet tier and the Diamond tier. Once I reach the Dead Tree tier, my body would be like a dead tree. Attacks on me would be as if hurting a dead tree without damaging its life. I can even have my body be like a dead tree, without any life signs. No one would be able to tell that I would still be alive. Once I reach the Diamond tier, then no matter how heavy the injury, it could be recovered in an instant, even a torn-off limb would be able to recover. It's practically a godly skill. Ling Han turned around and looked at the door to the inner chamber. The curtain moved, and a goddess-like figure walked out, her lightly blushing face incomparably graceful, beautiful and entrancing. You've completed cultivating the first level of 3 Yin mysterious arts? Ling Han said with a little surprise. Liu Yutong nodded, slightly afraid to meet Ling Han's eyes. An odd feeling was stirring to life within her heart, one that she had never felt before. This girl really is a genius, Ling Han thought in his heart. Chapter 10. Chapter 10, Healing the Spirit Base. 3 Yin Mysterious Arts has a total of 9 layers, corresponding with the 9 tiers of martial arts. The 9th layer would be the Heaven tier, which was the highest tier that Ling Han had reached in his previous life. Out of the many cultivation techniques circulated all over the world, none have broken through to the 10th tier, which was the Shattering Void tier. That was why Ling Han traveled all over the world to visit all kinds of ancient historical sites. The first layer of the cultivation technique known as 3 Yin Mysterious Arts corresponded to the Body Refining tier, a stage Liu Yutong had long passed through. It was naturally easy for her to cultivate it again. It was just like a high school student doing the homework of a junior high student. But the problem was, she had actually completed cultivation of the first layer within such a short time. Wasn't her talent way too strong? But thinking once more, Liu Yutong had the 3 yin vanishing veins, and 3 yin mysterious arts was originally formulated for someone who possessed such veins, so her impressive cultivation speed was something normal. Ling Han nodded, saying, "Then I'll continue to teach you the second layer. As long as you are able to cultivate the majority of the third layer, you will have completely suppressed the 3 yin vanishing veins, and will no longer be affected by them." The third layer, in other words, she would reach strength equal to the gushing spring tier. However, Liu Yutong was already at the 8th layer of element gathering tier. Moreover, she could already sense the juncture to break through to the 9th layer, so she was only one step away from breaking through to the gushing spring tier. Liu Yutong couldn't stop the blush on her beautiful face from increasing even more. To begin teaching her the second layer now, wouldn't that mean that she would have to take off her clothes again? "Don't let your imagination run wild," Ling Han said in reprimand. Liu Yutong could not help fiercely glaring at him. Her imagination was not running wild, rather, she was afraid that Ling Han's imagination was running wild instead. The two once again returned to the inner chamber and, just like the previous time, Liu Yutong removed her robe, allowing her alluring, beautiful figure to appear practically naked in front of Ling Han. As the saying went, the first time is awkward, the second is easy. Although she was still very embarrassed, it was much better than the first time. When Ling Han taught her the second layer, it was almost night. So, he had servants deliver 2 servings of dinner, of which he himself ate a large portion, leaving a smaller one for Liu Yutong. Women, you see, have small appetites, so a small portion was enough. After about 3 hours had passed, Liu Yutong once again exited and said in extreme surprise, "My cultivation speed now is actually 10 times faster than it used to be." This meant that once she broke through to the 9th layer of element gathering tier, she'd need less than 2 months to be able to reach the top before tackling the gushing spring tier. Too fast. Ling Han could not help smiling, and said, 3 yin mysterious arts is a heaven-grade cultivation technique. Heaven-grade cultivation technique. Liu Yutong almost fainted. What did heaven-grade cultivation technique mean? Let's just put it this way, the reason why the Liu clan had become one of the 8 great clans in the imperial city was because they had a scroll named Red Cloud Secrets, which was a black-grade medium-level cultivation technique. At the same time, the imperial Qi clan was able to secure its position as the lord of the land because they had a scroll named 7 Massacre Skills, which was a black-grade high-level cultivation technique. In other words, a black-grade high-level cultivation technique would allow the creation of an empire, and a black-grade medium-level cultivation technique would allow a power to become one of the great clans of Rain Country and thrive for 1,000 years. Now then, what significance did a heaven-grade cultivation technique have? It was indescribably valuable. If Ling Han had said from the start that he would teach her a heaven-grade cultivation technique, she would definitely have treated him as if he was crazy. You couldn't blame her after all. If a puny, little clan from Grey Cloud Town could have a heaven-grade cultivation technique, then wouldn't this world be completely messed up? But now, she couldn't not believe him, for she had personally experienced it. This is an actual heaven-grade cultivation technique, and you're just going to teach it to me like this? Her heart trembled, there was an unexplainable throbbing within her heart. Ling Han smiled. This 3 yin mysterious arts indeed was a heaven-grade cultivation technique, but could only be cultivated by the possessor of the 3 yin vanishing veins. It was useless in anyone else's hands, so of course he did not fear that Liu Yutong would divulge it. Moreover, he had obtained indestructible heaven scroll, a truly supreme godly cultivation technique. Just comprehending its first layer required 10,000 years. Compared with this, no matter what kind of heaven-grade cultivation technique it was, it was completely worthless. Naturally, he would not tell her that. Instead, he said, "You are my follower, I'm never a miser to my own people." This was not a Lieha had always swept any mess made by those close to him under the rug, and was very generous towards his own people. Liu Yutong could not stop an expression of embarrassment from appearing on her beautiful face. According to her understanding, The words own people had a completely different meaning. After a while, she finally said, "Don't worry, without your permission, I will not teach this cultivation technique to anyone else." "Whatever," Ling Han said. There would only be one possessor of the 3 yin vanishing veins every few thousand years anyway, so even if she taught it to someone else, it would be lost through the long passage of time to anyone else. This was a cultivation technique that couldn't even compare to yellow-grade low-level cultivation technique since no one else could cultivate in it. Who would actually want to preserve it for thousands of years? Liu Yutong could not help feeling a little disappointed. Previously her heart was trembling in excitement, and if Ling Han had just used a few sweet words to pamper her a bit, her good feelings towards Ling Han would definitely increase. However, Ling Han simply did not bear such thoughts, and so he missed an excellent opportunity. She walked towards the table and began to eat. While slowly eating, she said, "From tomorrow onwards, I will have to enter seclusion to tackle the 9th layer of element gathering tier, so I won't be able to follow you around in this period." "Ha ha, don't worry, don't worry. I have no plans to go anywhere these 2 days. I will simply wait for Zhu Hixin to deliver the medicinal ingredients. I plan to heal my spirit base first before doing anything else," Ling Han said. He treasured this second life very much. Now that his spirit base was injured, he definitely did not want to take unnecessary risks and ruin his own foundation in martial arts. Liu Yutong did not waste time. Once she finished eating, she entered seclusion to break through to the 9th layer of element gathering tier. Ling Han could only yield the inner chamber to her and move his bed to the outer chamber. Ling Zhongquan and his group felt immeasurable hatred towards Ling Han, but thanks to Liu Yutong's presence, they absolutely did not dare have any crazy ideas. Ling Han seldom came out, and only waited quietly for Zhu Hixin to deliver the medicine and for Liu Yutong to come out of seclusion, thus making it even more difficult for them to act. As expected, Zhu Hixin did not go back on his word and, on the 4th day, personally came to deliver the medicinal ingredients requested by Ling Han. Naturally, the old man also took the chance to consult with Ling Han. In truth, he had wanted to come over these few days, but in his eyes, Ling Han was at the level of a supreme grandmaster, so he didn't dare to come and disturb him for no reason. However, Ling Han did not have much patience today and very quickly saw Zhu Hixin off. He wanted to immediately start concocting, heal his spirit base and once again return to the path of cultivation. To Ling Han, concocting medicine was naturally a piece of cake. You couldn't blame her, after all. If a puny, little clan from Grey Cloud Town could have a heaven-grade cultivation technique, then wouldn't this world be completely messed up? But now, she couldn't not believe him, for she had personally experienced it. "This is an actual heaven-grade cultivation technique, and you're just going to teach it to me like this?" Her heart trembled, there was an unexplainable throbbing within her heart. Ling Han smiled. This 3 yin mysterious arts indeed was a heaven-grade cultivation technique, but could only be cultivated by the possessor of the 3 yin vanishing veins. It was useless in anyone else's hands, so of course he did not fear that Liu Yutong would divulge it. Moreover, he had obtained indestructible heaven scroll, a truly supreme godly cultivation technique. Just comprehending its first layer required 10,000 years. Compared with this, no matter what kind of heaven-grade cultivation technique it was, it was completely worthless. Naturally, he would not tell her that. Instead, he said, "You are my follower. I'm never a miser to my own people." This was not a lie, he had always swept any mess made by those close to him under the rug, and was very generous towards his own people. Liu Yutong could not stop an expression of embarrassment from appearing on her beautiful face. According to her understanding, the words own people had a completely different meaning. After a while, she finally said, "Don't worry, without your permission, I will not teach this cultivation technique to anyone else." "Whatever," Ling Han said. There would only be one possessor of the 3 yin vanishing veins every few thousand years anyway, so even if she taught it to someone else, it would be lost through the long passage of time to anyone else. This was a cultivation technique that couldn't even compare to yellow-grade low-level cultivation technique since no one else could cultivate in it. Who would actually want to preserve it for thousands of years? Liu Yutong could not help feeling a little disappointed. Previously her heart was trembling in excitement, and if Ling Han had just used a few sweet words to pamper her a bit, her good feelings towards Ling Han would definitely increase. However, Ling Han simply did not bear such thoughts, and so he missed an excellent opportunity. She walked towards the table and began to eat. While slowly eating, she said, "From tomorrow onwards, I will have to enter seclusion to tackle the 9th layer of element gathering tier, so I won't be able to follow you around in this period." "Ha ha, don't worry, don't worry. I have no plans to go anywhere these 2 days. I will simply wait for Zhu Hixin to deliver the medicinal ingredients. I plan to heal my spirit base first before doing anything else," Ling Han said. He treasured this second life very much. Now that his spirit base was injured, he definitely did not want to take unnecessary risks and ruin his own foundation in martial arts. Liu Yutong did not waste time. Once she finished eating, she entered seclusion to break through to the 9th layer of element gathering tier. Ling Han could only yield the inner chamber to her and move his bed to the outer chamber. Ling Zhongquan and his group felt immeasurable hatred towards Ling Han, but thanks to Liu Yutong's presence, they absolutely did not dare have any crazy ideas. Ling Han seldom came out, and only waited quietly for Zhu Hixin to deliver the medicine and for Liu Yutong to come out of seclusion, thus making it even more difficult for them to act. As expected, Zhu Hixin did not go back on his word and, on the 4th day, personally came to deliver the medicinal ingredients requested by Ling Han. Naturally, the old man also took the chance to consult with Ling Han. In truth, he had wanted to come over these few days, but in his eyes, Ling Han was at the level of a supreme grandmaster, so he didn't dare to come and disturb him for no reason. However, Ling Han did not have much patience today and very quickly saw Zhu Hixin off. He wanted to immediately start concocting, heal his spirit base and once again return to the path of cultivation. To Ling Han, concocting medicine was naturally a piece of cake. Chapter 11. Chapter 11, 4th layer of body refining tier. He could finally start cultivating. Ling Han had been waiting for it for 3 long days. Add to that the long wait he had experienced for the past 10,000 years, and it was no wonder that he would immediately sit in a cross-legged position to cultivate now that he realized he could finally start cultivating. However, just as he was about to circulate 5 elements heaven grade skill, he paused for a while, stood up and opened the door to his room, entering the courtyard outside. Liu Yutong was still in seclusion to break through to the 9th layer of element gathering tier inside the inner chamber. If he started cultivating too close to her, he would disturb the spiritual environment within this small area and affect her cultivation. See, what a considerate master he was. Ling Han sat cross-legged in the courtyard. This courtyard belonged to his father, Ling Dongxing. As the clan head of the Ling clan, the courtyard was naturally very big, but Ling Han had long since dismissed the servants, and would only allow someone to deliver the 3 meals of the day here. Come, come, let me see the greatness of an immortal grade spirit base. With a mental command from Ling Han, his spirit base immediately bloomed like a flower. A lotus of the Tao, the 5 elements in balance, this was the most perfect form of a spirit base. Wang. The spiritual qi immediately rushed over from all directions, rich beyond compare. The 5 elements of the world: gold, wood, water, fire, and earth, and thus 5 different types of spiritual qi rushed frantically into his body, the latter like a thirsty horse drinking from a spring. Ordinarily, a person had no way to absorb more than one type of spiritual qi because it was impossible to simultaneously refine more than one type of it. That's why cultivators usually focused only on one in their cultivation. For example, someone could have a spirit base with a dual alignment of fire and earth, the fire spirit base being slightly stronger. It meant that the absorption rate of fire-type spiritual qi would be higher, so he would only need to focus on refining fire-type spiritual qi, and would not be able to obtain both it and earth-type spiritual qi. However, the wonderful characteristic of the 5 elements mix chaos lotus was that it could take advantage of the mutual reinforcement and restraint of the 5 elements, and make the 5 different types of spiritual qi create a perfect balance. However, absorbing spiritual qi was one matter, refining it was another. Only 5 elements heaven grade skill could achieve both. This cultivation technique was not something just anyone could control. It required high-level multitasking and did not allow any errors or mistakes, otherwise, the origin power could enter the wrong pathways. A light consequence of this would be spitting out some fresh blood, The most serious consequence would be instant death. Immortal grade spirit base, heaven grade skill, and extremely strong control. Only with these three factors combined would one possessing the 5 elements mix chaos lotus spirit base be able to cultivate 5 elements heaven grade skill. Being able to satisfy such high requirements, Ling Han's cultivation speed could be imagined. Endless spiritual qi rushed inwards and Ling Han's body continuously generated origin power, refining his blood, flesh, veins and bones. A martial artist of the body refining tier had not yet opened up his dantian, and so could only store his origin power within his blood, flesh, veins and bones. Only once he stepped into the element gathering tier could he open up his dantian and form a small world within his body to accommodate his origin power there. In his previous life, he was a strong warrior of the heaven tier, so naturally he would not make any wrong turns on the path of cultivation. As he now possessed the greatest spirit base in the world and cultivated the best first-rate technique in existence, the speed of his progress was naturally as if he had grown wings and taken flight. The middle period of the second layer of body refining tier, late period ear peak, with only a slight tremble of his body, the hurdle for the third layer of body refining tier was immediately overcome. So fast. Ling Han nodded secretly. In his last life, he had a high-level heaven-grade spirit base, but he had still spent 12 days to get from the second layer of body refining tier to the third layer of body refining tier. However, it was not because a high-level heaven-grade spirit base was really poor in comparison to an immortal-grade spirit base, but rather because Ling Han had been cultivating a high-level yellow-grade cultivation technique at that time. The present him was as if standing on the shoulder of a giant. There was no way that his last life could compare to the starting point he was at now. He had no intention of stopping there. He intently and continuously refined the spiritual qi from the environment, turning it into his own body's origin power. The early period of the third layer of body refining tier, middle period, late period, peak. Within only a few hours' time, he had reached the limit of the third layer and thus of the early stage of the body refining tier. However, after spending such a long time cultivating, his mental energy was largely depleted. The requirements for controlling 5 elements heaven grade skill were quite high after all. If he continued cultivating, he could misrefine his origin power at any moment, bringing only harm and no benefit. Still, he had already reached this level, so no matter what, he wanted to break through to the 4th layer of body refining tier today. The 3rd layer was still the early stage of body refining tier, while the 4th layer was the middle stage. This was a large leap and not just a simple breakthrough from one layer to another. For an ordinary person to think of breaking through twice in a short period of time, that was without doubt a complete fantasy. No matter what, to break through would require at least 2 or 3 days of accumulating origin power. However, Ling Han was a warrior of the heaven tier in his last life, so to him, there were no bottlenecks before heaven tier. Breakthrough. He snorted lightly, and there was a subtle change within his body. With a slight tremble of his body, he had once again broken through. 4th layer of body refining tier, now this can finally be shown to others, he showed a slight smile. Although this layer of cultivation could not be considered really high amongst those of the same age, to consecutively break through 2 minor layers within a single night was still something that gave him great satisfaction. Moreover, the cultivation technique he was using was a heaven-grade skill. His origin power was incomparably pure, its quality far higher than that of any other person's. The power of the 4th layer of body refining tier he wielded was enough to compare with the power of someone from the peak period 5th layer of body refining tier, or even the 6th layer. Sleep. He got onto the bed. Due to the large expense of his mental energy, he very quickly fell asleep. However, it was a light sleep as his consciousness was still 70% alert, so that he could immediately awaken at the smallest disturbance. The night passed quickly, and he was shaken awake by a great fluctuation of origin power. He immediately sat upright, revealing a very alert expression, but then immediately realized that it was not an enemy attack, but rather Liu Yutong who had broken through. To break through to the 9th layer of element gathering tier from the 8th layer of element gathering tier in 3 days, her talent was really quite good. For every tier, the further one got, the harder it was to break through. It was as if one was rowing a boat against the tide. With a soft sound, the hanging curtain of the doorway opened, and he could see Liu Yutong walk out, a strong energy fluctuation present around her body. She had just broken through, and was still unable to control the energy swelling around her body properly. "I broke through," she said to Ling Han, and there was delight and pride on her beautiful face. 3 days to completely breach the gap between 2 layers, moreover the most difficult one between 8th and 9th layer, this was indeed something to take pride in. She looked towards Ling Han, hoping to hear a compliment from the other's mouth. However, her joy and pride very quickly completely vanished. The expression on her face was as if she had just seen a ghost. Pointing towards Ling Han, she said, You're already in the 4th layer of body refining tier." She remembered very clearly that, before her seclusion, Ling Han was only at the 2nd layer of body refining tier. Moreover, Zhu Hixin's medicine had only been delivered yesterday morning. Carefully calculating, from the moment his spirit base recovered to the moment he broke through to the 4th layer of body refining tier, Ling Han had only spent 1 day and 1 night. 1 day and 1 night to break through 2 minor layers. Under comparison, what would her spending 3 days just to break through 1 layer count as? Everyone said that the young master of the Ling clan was a standard piece of trash, but if someone with this kind of progress rate was still considered a piece of trash, then what would she count as? A piece of trash amongst all other trash? You're now in the 4th layer of body refining tier. Even her voice had a slight tremble in it. If someone had told her a day ago that she would be shocked because of someone breaking through to 4th layer of body refining tier, she would have replied with nothing but a snort of contempt. However, if they added that someone spent 1 day to break through from the 2nd layer of body refining tier to the 4th layer of body refining tier, she would definitely find that the biggest joke in the world. She had once thought that there would be no more miracles from Ling Han, yet she never imagined that she would once again experience such an earth-shattering shock. Ling Han nodded, and with a calm tone, he said, "That's right, what of it? How can you dismiss it so lightly?" Liu Yutong immediately felt as if she was about to go mad. Chapter 12. Chapter 12, Father's Return. Peng, 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 peng. It was at that very moment that an urgent knocking was heard from the door. Ling Han walked over and opened the door only to see a boy servant. He had already commanded that, if there was no urgent business, he was not to be disturbed. Thus, he asked, "What happened?" "The clan head has returned," the boy servant hurriedly said. Excitement instantly rose within Ling Han's body, pressing him to meet with that man. This was an instinctive reaction of the body. "Father," he murmured. He had inherited this body, and had also inherited the blood and responsibility that belonged to this body. He turned and smiled at Liu Yutong, saying, "Yutong, come with me to meet my father." A red blush immediately flew upon Liu Yutong's beautiful face. She felt as if she was a daughter-in-law going to meet with her parents-in-law. Pay. She hurriedly spat in her heart a few times. Why would she have this kind of feeling? There was nothing going on between herself and this guy. "Where is father?" Ling Han asked the boy servant. "In the main hall." Ling Han headed towards the main hall, and the pace of his steps increased from walking to running. There was a powerful longing in his heart. The moment he barged into the living hall, he saw a man of about 40 years old, standing there proudly. He had a tall, broad figure, a handsome face, and exuded a powerful aura. At that moment, Ling Han could not longer differentiate whether it was the instinctive reaction of the body, or the fact that he was an orphan in his last life and so thirsted for familial love. His eyes could not help growing wet, and the blood relation running through his veins caused him to easily call out, "Father, Hannah." Ling Dongxing laughed heartily and quickly walked over to embrace Ling Han. However, he immediately put on a shocked expression and said, "Why are you still in the clan residence? Aren't you supposed to have gone to Huyang Academy?" This was fatherly love. This was fatherly love. Ling Han greedily enjoyed the embrace of his father. Although in his last life, someone with Ling Dongxing's cultivation level was not even qualified to enter his eyes, now he was shaken to the point that his eyes were brimming with tears. He had finally cast aside the identity of his last life to enjoy his new life. He was no longer a loner without any family. He had a father, a good father who would risk his own life for him. He rubbed at the corners of his eyes, shook his head and said, "I don't want to go to Huyang Academy." "Why?" Ling Dongxing asked. He knew that the quality of his only son's spirit base was too poor. Even though he had expended various efforts, his cultivation still did not make any progress. This was something that could not be helped. And he too had worked very hard to send Ling Han to Huyang Academy, which was to make use of the various immeasurable resources on hand at Huyang Academy to forcibly raise Ling Han's cultivation level to element gathering tier. Only with that could he die without regrets. But Ling Han actually said he did not want to go to Huyang Academy. This caused his anger to rise. There was no helping being born with poor talent, but if there was not even a tiny bit of desire to improve oneself, then there really was no cure. Ling Han naturally couldn't say that he had been a warrior of the heaven tier in his last life, and there were countless high-level cultivation techniques and martial skills stored within his head, or that he had obtained the indestructible heaven scroll that required him to spend 10,000 years just to comprehend the first layer. Even if he went to Huyang Academy, what was he supposed to learn? If he had really said so, Ling Dongxing might think that he had been possessed. Yu Tong, come, this is my father, he said as he glanced at Liu Yutong, hurriedly beckoning her to come over with a wave of his hands, changing the subject. Yutong hereby greets Ling Clan's clan head. Liu Yutong performed the greeting etiquette of a junior. Ling Dongxing was startled. He did not know who Liu Yutong was, yet he could tell that she was a martial artist of the element-gathering tier just like him, and that her cultivation didn't differ much from his own. Both of them were at the 9th layer of element-gathering tier. Most martial artists would be able to tell the cultivation level of those weaker than themselves. Ling Han was an exception after all. He had brought along the amazing knowledge of a warrior of the heaven tier from his past life. With this being the case, she could completely stand at the same level as he, and there was no need for her to perform the greeting of a junior. Wait, could it be? He suddenly looked both joyful and surprised. Could it be because of Ling Han? This young girl liked his son. With this thought, he could not restrain his delight. This girl seemed to be only about 17 or 18 years old, yet shockingly, she was already at the 9th layer of element-gathering tier. Her talent definitely had to be extremely high. With such an excellent companion, so what if Ling Han's own cultivation level was poorer? No wonder this brat didn't want to go to Huyang Academy. It must be that he did not want to be separated from her. Hey, this brat was actually an affectionate character. You little brat. Ling Dongxing first glared at Ling Han, then said to Liu Yutong, Miss, where are you from? The Liu clan of the Imperial City, Liu Yutong replied. Ling Dongxing was shocked. The Liu clan of the Imperial City? Although there were many in the world with the surname Liu, there was only one Liu clan in the Imperial City, one of the 8 great clans, with power which was only below that of the Imperial family in the whole of Rain Country. Such a great background. Wait, you should be the one sent from Huyang Academy to fetch Hannah to the academy, right? He suddenly saw a flash of light. Otherwise, how could it be possible someone of the Liu clan from the Imperial City would appear here? Yes, Ling clan head, Liu Yutong said softly. Ling Dongxing could not help looking over at Ling Han, and in his heart thought that although his son was not capable and without talent in martial arts, his ability to pick up girls really took one's breath away. The other was here only to fetch him, so how did he manage to capture the other's heart? Moreover, he only needed several days. Ling Han had inherited the graceful, charming demeanor of his younger days. Yes, it had to be it. But since Liu Yutong was someone from Huyang Academy, why wouldn't Ling Han follow her then? The two of them would both be at the Yang Academy, so there wouldn't be any worry about being in 2 separate places. Father, I would like to be by your side for a while longer. I can go to the academy anytime later anyway, Ling Han said. He did not want to scare his father, and thus planned to proceed slowly, and let Ling Dongxing accept the change in him bit by bit. Ling Dongxing gave a hearty laugh, and said, Good. After all, the one who would be fetching him was still here, so Ling Han could go to Huyang Academy at any time he wanted. He patted Ling Han's shoulder and was just about to say something more on the topic, but made a shocked expression as he noticed, Hannah, you've broken through. Finally there is someone to share the shock I have experienced, Liu Yutong thought. I broke through, Ling Han nodded. I have only departed for 10 days, and you did not just break through, you actually broke through 2 layers. Ling Dongxing's surprise did not decrease any bit. This kind of progression rate was completely inconceivable. If Ling Han had only broken through one layer, then it could be explained that Ling Han had been well prepared, and had been at the same layer for too long a period of time and thus induced a one-time explosion using the accumulated origin power. But 2 whole layers, this would practically shock others to death. Was his son really a piece of trash? If this was still considered a piece of trash, then was there still any genius in this world? Seeing the twitching corners of Ling Dongxing's mouth, Liu Yutong instantly felt comforted in her heart. She didn't want to be the only one to always suffer this kind of great shock. Yen, it's acceptable, Ling Han nodded. Ling Dongxing and Liu Yutong both rolled their eyes. Only acceptable? However, Ling Dongxing instantly laughed heartily, saying, "Ha ha ha, let's see who would dare to say my son is a piece of trash in the future. Which father would not want his son to be successful in life?" So far, Ling Han could only be a piece of trash due to the limitations of his spirit base, yet now Ling Dongxing felt as if he had seen a spark of hope. "Father, I obtained a fateful encounter," Ling Han said. Ling Dongxing nodded. If there had been no fateful encounter, how would Ling Han be able to make such quick progress? However, this fateful encounter was indeed extraordinarily large. Chapter 13. Chapter 13. Ling Dongxing's regret. "Father, I will definitely not disappoint you. I will only make you proud of me," Ling Han said. Good. 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 You truly are my, Ling Dongxing's, son." Ling Dongxing too was excited to the point of shedding tears. Although he did not know what kind of fateful encounter Ling Han had obtained, the present him could only feel joyful, excited and delighted. He wanted nothing more than to announce to the whole world that his son, Ling Dongxing's son, was not a piece of trash. Liu Yutong looked at this scene and, for some reason, the corners of her eyes felt slightly wet. "Father, I would like to discuss something with you." Ling Han pulled Ling Dongxing to a corner of their courtyard, and let Liu Yutong go to rest first. There were some words that could only be said to his father and, after all, Liu Yutong had not yet obtained his true approval and trust. "What kind of matter is it for you to be so mysterious about it?" Ling Dongxing asked with a smile and a bit of curiosity. He was curious what the words that could not even be heard by Liu Yutong could be. He naturally thought that Ling Han and Liu Yutong were already a couple. Ling Han said, "Father, let me look at your spirit base." One could actually view the spirit base using a special means, but for those in the element gathering tier, they could directly project an image of their spirit base without having to resort to any supporting method. Ling Dongxing could not help frowning, before saying, "Why? I would like to find a cultivation technique that best suits you, taking into consideration your spirit base," Ling Han said. Ling Dongxing could not help being secretly speechless. How many cultivation techniques had this son of his gotten his hands on to actually be able to choose a cultivation technique best suited to the individual according to their type of spirit base? If he had not just witnessed Ling Han's miracle, he would not believe his words one bit. He shook his head, yet did not say a single word. "Father." When Ling Han looked at Ling Dongxing, he realized there seemed to be some kind of hidden story. Ling Dongxing exhaled a sigh and said, "No matter what the cultivation technique is, it's useless. My spirit base is already destroyed." "What?" Ling Han called softly, but very soon, an enraged expression slipped onto his face. "Who did it?" Ling Dongxing was a warrior of the element gathering tier, so there was no way that his spirit base had been disabled from the start. Thus, the logical conclusion was that it had been crippled by someone else. Ling Han was someone who would cover the shortcomings of his own people. Moreover, this was his own father, so naturally he would be seething in anger. "This matter is related to your mother," Ling Dongxing sighed, and his face revealed a flash of tenderness, though there also seemed to be remorse and wrath mixed with it. To put it shortly, it was an extremely complicated expression. "Mother," Ling Han murmured. According to this body's memories, Ling Dongxing had never once mentioned anything about his mother to him. Every time he asked about his mother, Ling Dongxing would immediately change the subject. The only thing he knew was that, not long after his birth, his mother had passed away. "In the past, I thought that the issue about your mother would forever be buried within the depths of my heart, but now Ling Dongxing paused. "Hannah, if you can achieve element gathering tier within 3 years' time, then I shall tell you about your mother. She's not dead," A powerful excitement rose up within Ling Han's heart. The heavens were truly generous to him, not only gifting him with fatherly love, but also gifting him with the chance to obtain motherly love as well. He laughed heartily, and said, "How difficult would that be? I don't need 3 years, I will be able to break through to element gathering tier within 3 months' time." Ling Dongxing was shaken. 3 months to break through from the 4th layer of body refining tier to element gathering tier? Was this possible? Even for him, who had once been acclaimed as the greatest genius of Grey Cloud Town, it had taken a whole 2 years' time to make such a gigantic leap. But once he recalled that Ling Han had broken through 2 layers within a mere 7 days, to break through to element gathering tier within 3 months didn't look all that impossible. He was startled for a moment, before he said, "Very well, if you can break through to element gathering tier within 3 months, then I shall tell you everything, and you will be the one to go and rescue your mother." Rescue? This meant that his mother was currently confined in some place. No wonder Ling Dongxing had always deceived him by saying his mother had passed away, so it had been a white lie. Ling Han nodded, but he still said with a smile, "Doesn't father want to rescue mother with your own hands?" Ling Dongxing's fierce eyes widened, and he showed an excited expression, yet very quickly calmed down again. He said, "My spirit base is already destroyed, I have to take return origin pills just to recover origin power. There is no way for me to advance forward. And to save your mother would require at least the cultivation level of Flower Blossom tier." Aside from the legendary Shattering Void tier, there were in total 9 tiers in martial arts, which were respectively Body Refining, Element Gathering, Gushing Spring, Spiritual Ocean, Spiritual Pedestal, Flower Blossom, Spiritual Infant, Deity Transformation and Heaven tiers. Flower Blossom tier, the 6th tier. What kind of concept was this? The strongest warrior of the 8 great clans of Rain Country was only of the Spiritual Pedestal tier, and according to the rumors, the Imperial clan possessed extremely powerful warriors of the Flower Blossom tier to keep watch over the central administration, which was what kept the 8 great clans in check, ensuring they have no thoughts of trying anything funny. Someone who had reached the cultivation of the Flower Blossom tier would be able to start their own country to hand down to their descendant. However, to Ling Han, who had once been a warrior of the Heaven tier, so what if it was the Flower Blossom tier? And in this new life, all of his starting conditions were even more outstanding: immortal grade spirit base, indestructible Heaven scroll. Moreover, he had already passed through all 9 tiers of martial arts once, so there was no way he would encounter any kind of bottleneck, and his excellent alchemist skills would be able to provide him with all kinds of alchemical pills and medicines. 30 years, at most, 50 years, and he would be able to once again return to the pinnacle. Ling Han laughed and said, "Father, the spirit base is a part of the body, there is no such thing as being unable to heal the spirit base, just let me take a look." Ling Dongxing stared at Ling Han for a while before he finally nodded, and said, "Very well." He raised both arms as if he were holding something and, with a mental command, he projected the spirit base in his dantian into open view. Ling Han was slightly shocked. Ling Dongxing's spirit base was surprisingly the low-level heaven-grade broken edge sword, of the gold alignment. No wonder that even though Ling Dongxing had long had his spirit base crippled, he was still in the 9th layer of element gathering tier. That was because the speed of his cultivation was very quick, and he had long since achieved this kind of cultivation level. However, currently this broken edge sword had long lost its blade, and only a bit of the sword hilt was left behind. There was no possible way that it could continue to absorb spiritual chi, so it was practically completely destroyed. The destruction of the spirit base meant that it was no longer possible for the owner's martial arts to improve further. However, making it recover was of no difficulty to Ling Han. He said, "Father, your spirit base can still be healed, but I currently do not have the necessary medicinal ingredients on hand, so I need some time." There really was hope. Ling Dongxing could not help it as his hands tightened into fists. If he could, he would of course want to personally save his wife from her abyss of suffering, but because his spirit base had been destroyed, he could only place his hopes on his son. In the past, when Ling Han's spirit base was awakened, and yet it was revealed to be the 5 elements disarray spirit base, Ling Dongxing felt unbearably disappointed and painful. From that moment, he gave up his hopes and deceived Ling Han by saying his mother had already died, shouldering all the pain and longing by himself. Hannah, is what you're saying the truth? He asked in a trembling voice. Of course it's the truth, Ling Han replied solemnly. Give me 3 years, no, 2 years' time, and I will definitely find the medicinal ingredients for father and create an alchemical pill to heal father's spirit base. Ling Dongxing said generously, very well, then at that time, the two of us, father and son, will join forces to save your mother and reunite our family. Ling Han nodded. However, you will still have to obediently go to Huyang Academy for me. Ling Dongxing suddenly switched the topic. Ling Han could not help feeling a little depressed. He had already displayed such excellent talents, so why did his old man still not believe him, and compel him to go to Huyang Academy? However, his father's doing was all for his sake, and was well meant. Since his father wanted him to go so much, then he'd just go. It didn't matter where he cultivated anyway. Moreover, Grey Cloud Town was too small, and could not possibly supply the cultivation resources he required anyway. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.